Chapter 2688. Use Xiaoka's treat, that's right, that's it. Maybe when I become a Sky class, I can raise your strength to Earth class late phase peak. Linny said, that's a drawback. If you don't agree, then I can only heal your injuries, and you can train on your own. That way, you won't be restricted. Train on my own? Boss Bai smiled bitterly after hearing Lin Yi's words. You don't think that my training on my own will be faster than you helping me, do you? When you become a Sky class, I probably won't even be able to step into the Mystic class. Compared to the Earth class late phase peak, it's naturally easier for you to help me. But you used to be a Heaven class late phase peak, right? Lin Yi didn't even need to ask to know that Boss Bai must have been a Sky class late phase peak master. Otherwise, how could Boss Bai not be a Sky class late phase peak master if even his disciples were Sky class late phase peak masters? Boss Bai was the head of the 5 Elements sect. You're right, but you have to figure out how I got my Heaven rank late stage strength. First of all, that place is rich in spiritual energy, and there are countless treasures. There are all kinds of elixirs and cultivation resources. Naturally, the speed at which I improve my strength is not the same as now. Boss Bai explained, back then, my training could be said to be 1,000 miles a day, but now, it's not bad to be able to reach 1 mile 1,000 days. There's no comparison at all. That's true. Lin Yi nodded. He had forgotten about this before. Boss Bai was no different from a solo cultivator now. If he trained on his own, there wouldn't be any effect at all. And in that place, thinking about how Little 1 and Little 11 didn't even care about the energy stones in Sun Jingyi's hands, just how rich were the training resources in their sect. Although the energy in that energy stone was almost used up, if it were any other cultivator, they wouldn't let it go, right? But in the eyes of Little 1 and Little 11, it was just trash. So, if possible, please help me and Xinshin to improve our strength. If Xinshin cultivates with me, she won't be able to achieve much in her life, unless... Boss Bai paused and did not continue. You're right. You're right. You're right. What's wrong? Lin Yi was slightly taken aback. Nothing. Boss Bai shook his head. There are some things that you'd better not know for now. Lin Yi nodded and didn't ask any questions. That's right. That's my plan for Guan Xian. I'm going to raise her strength all the way until she's the same as Jing Jing. As for you, if you've made up your mind, then there's no problem. I'll raise your strength first tonight. Thanks a lot. Although Boss Bai had guessed the result, he was still thrilled that Lin Yi agreed in person. You don't have to thank me. You and I are master and disciple, and the disciple will do his best to heal his injuries. Plus, you're going to risk your life for the tomb because of my constitution? Lin Yi smiled and waved his hand. Hee, then I won't say thank you. Actually, apart from helping you, I also want to go to the ancient tomb to take a look. After all, this is the ancient tomb of our 5 Elements sect's founder, Boss Bai said. As they spoke, the car arrived at Guan Shuamin's villa area. Lin Yi followed Boss Bai and Guan Xian out of the car. Lin Yi wanted to visit Guan Shuamin first before going to find Xiaoka. Guan Shuamin was very excited when he found out that Lin Yi, his granddaughter, and his old friend were coming today. He was waiting at the entrance of the villa, and when he saw Boss Bai's car, he went up immediately. Old Bai Lily, Xinshin, you're back, Guan Shuamin said. Grandpa. Guan Xian hadn't seen her grandpa for a long time. She missed him very much. Xinshin, how was it? Were you obedient in Grandpa Bai's house? Guan Shuamin asked with a smile. Grandpa and granddaughter met, old friend met, and it was a happy and harmonious reunion. Lin Yi didn't stay for dinner because he had a date with Xiaoka. Lin Yi carried his backpack and left the villa. He didn't drive, but walked to the orphanage. On the way, Lin Yi called Xiaoka. Xiaoka was in a state of restlessness today. She was a little afraid that Lin Yi would call, but Lin Yi finally called. Hello? Xiaoka saw the caller ID of Lin Yi and sighed in her heart. She picked up the phone. Xiaoka, it's me, Lin Yi said. I'm at the entrance of the orphanage now. Where are you? I'll go out then. Xiaoka answered helplessly. She thought to herself, if it's a blessing, it's not a curse. Okay. Lin Yi nodded with a smile. After a while, Xiaoka walked out of the orphanage and saw Lin Yi standing there with his backpack. Xiaoka felt strange. Why didn't Lin Yi drive his car here? Xiaoka, you're so pretty. Linny looked at Xiaoka. She had obviously dressed up today, but Linny knew that she was dressing up to give herself another identity. It wasn't the current Lin Yi. Oh, Xiaoka replied faintly. Linny guessed right, Xiaoka was dressing up for the male thief. After eating with Lin Yi, she probably wouldn't have time to dress up, so she had to dress up beforehand. I'm not dressing up for you. Haha, Linny didn't mind at all. Linny knew the truth naturally. He wouldn't argue with Xiaoka about it. What Xiaoka didn't know was that Linny was laughing at her sarcasm. Just how thick was this guy's skin? Where's the money? Xiaoka couldn't be bothered to argue with Lin Yi. She reached out her hand. Linny smiled and took out 2 stacks of money from his pocket. He was about to count out 20 bills from one of the stacks and give the rest to Xiaoka, but Xiaoka snatched it away from him. What are you doing? Linny asked. No need to count, keep the change. Xiaoka didn't wait for Lin Yi to reply. Didn't you want to treat me to a meal? Let's go. I'll take you there. Oh, okay. Linny nodded and followed behind Xiaoka. The two turned here and there and came to a small alley. It was a food street in Donghai City. There were all sorts of snacks on this street, and it was very lively. Chapter 2689. What's in the bag? Noodles? Can you eat 18,000? Linny had guessed Xiaoka's intentions, but he was still speechless when she brought him here to eat shaved noodles that cost a few yuan a bowl. I didn't say I'd finish it today. I'll eat the rest tomorrow and the day after. I'll finish it sooner or later if I eat it every day, month after month, Xiaoka said nonchalantly. Xiaoka said nonchalantly and waved at the boss. Boss, give me 2 big bowls of shaved noodles. Sure. Do you want meat and eggs? The boss asked. No need. Xiaoka shook her head. What about the side dishes? The boss asked. I don't want it either. Xiaoka rejected. I think the side dishes here are pretty good. Why don't we get one? Linny looked at the side dishes. They were pretty good, especially the side dishes. The red oil was very tempting. I don't want it. Then I want one for myself? Linny asked. You eat it yourself. It's not your treat. Xiaoka said. All right, I'll pay for it myself. Linny guessed that Xiaoka was a stingy person. He stood up with a smile and asked the boss to bring 2 plates of side dishes. He then paid for the 2 bowls of noodles. The side dishes and shaved noodles were placed on the table at almost the same time. Xiaoka picked up the chopsticks and started eating the side dishes without hesitation. She didn't even have time to eat the noodles before she finished all the side dishes on the table. Didn't you say that the side dishes aren't good? Linny sweated as he looked at the way Xiaoka was wolfing down the food. He felt a little sad as well. Xiaoka was handling tens of millions of dollars at a time, but judging from the way she was eating, she probably didn't have anything good to eat. Otherwise, she wouldn't be wolfing down the food like a wolf. Oh, the usual ones aren't good. Today's is pretty good. Don't tell me you don't want to treat me because I ate too much? Then I'll go. Xiaoka looked at Lin Yi. Her face not red nor her heart skipped a beat. Then you eat. Linny smiled and called for 2 more dishes, but Xiaoka glared at him. You want so much. Wouldn't it be a waste if you can't finish it? Xiaoka stopped the owner and only asked him to add a side dish. Squeak, squeak. Skybolt Pig smelled the aroma of the food and started to squeak. This little pig had been living with Lin Yi for a long time, so it started to eat human food. After all the true chi it cultivated came from Lin Yi, so it didn't need to eat any natural treasures anymore. It didn't have much to eat, so it just ate human food. Unexpectedly, this little guy became addicted to it. Other than pork, it even ate dog meat. In the end, it was beaten up by General Weiwu. Lin Yi furrowed his brows, startled. This heavenly lightning pig was really good at causing trouble. What was it shouting at this time? Didn't he want Xiaoka to notice him? The orphanage couldn't take care of them for the rest of their lives, could it? The orphanage's expenses were very tight right now, and it was a joke to take care of these children for the rest of their lives. Xiaoka started to think about the future after Lin Yi reminded her. That's right, these children can't be like you, becoming thieves when they grow up, right? You don't want them to be like that, right? Lin Yi asked. Are you looking down on me? Xiaoka glared at Lin Yi. Nope, I wouldn't treat you to a meal if I looked down on you, Lin Yi said. I'm telling you this because I want you to get out of it as soon as possible. Girls age easily when they're too tired, and I don't want you to become an old woman too early. Chapter 2690. I don't know what to say with your attitude, Linny shrugged and said angrily. Fine, fine. Linny, what do you want? Xiaoka was helpless. What do you want me to do? Do you really have to force me? I told you that I have someone I like. Why are you? Oh, I didn't say anything then. Linny lowered his head and ate his noodles, not bringing up the topic again. Xiaoka gritted her teeth in anger, but there was nothing she could do. She didn't want to compromise, but there was nothing she could do. She panicked, and her tears started to fall. Her tears were like raindrops, dripping down into the bowl. Lin Yi didn't think that Xiaoka would cry. This strong girl actually cried. How wronged was she? Lin Yi didn't think that his joke would hurt Xiaoka so much. Lin Yi couldn't bear it inside. I'm going to talk to Pengzhan Industries and let the children of the right age go to school. Currently, Pengzhan Industries' first high school only has a middle school and doesn't have a primary school yet. If there's a need, I'll suggest them to open a primary school for the orphanage. Is that really possible? Xiaoka heard Lin Yi's words and didn't care about her tears anymore. Her mind was on the children in the orphanage. She raised her head and looked at Lin Yi with her big, watery eyes. Then, you don't have any additional conditions, right? Additional conditions? Lin Yi paused and understood what Xiaoka meant. He shook his head and smiled. No, it's all for the orphanage. That's good, thank you. Xiaoka stood up and bowed to Lin Yi. Lin Yi, you are actually a good person. I know that. If I didn't have someone I like, I would definitely be with you. But now, I really have no other choice. I'm sorry. Is this a good person card? Lin Yi touched his nose and asked. I don't know. Xiaoka shook her head. Hee, I won't give up, Lin Yi said. I knew it. Xiaoka lowered her head helplessly and glared at Lin Yi. Fine, up to you. I'll send you back? Seeing that Xiaoka was almost done, Lin Yi didn't want to sit there anymore. After all, this was a food street with a lot of customers. Lin Yi and Xiaoka occupying a table would affect the boss's business. We can go now? That's great. Xiaoka stood up and waved her hand. It's fine. I'll go back myself. Go to your stuff. Don't worry about me. Okay. Lin Yi smiled. It seemed like Xiaoka didn't want to stay with him for even a minute longer. However, Lin Yi didn't want to send Xiaoka back. He needed to find a place to wear his clothes inside out and put on the 1,000 silk mask. You aren't sending me back? Lin Yi answered so quickly that Xiaoka felt like it was unreal. Didn't you say you didn't want me to send you back? How about I send you back? Lin Yi asked. It's fine. I'm leaving. Bye. Xiaoka shook her head and left quickly. Lin Yi left as well, but he didn't go in the same direction as Xiaoka. Lin Yi found a place with no one around and put the clothes on inside out. This was the type that could be worn inside out, very suitable for traveling in the wild. Lin Yi also wore the 1,000 silk mask on his face. At this moment, Lin Yi became a stranger, exactly the same as when he was at the practitioner's market. After doing all this, Lin Yi came to the orphanage again. Xiaoka was already waiting there. Male thief. Xiaoka saw Lin Yi from afar and waved at him happily and excitedly. She must have been looking forward to seeing him for a long time. The gloominess from eating with Lin Yi was gone, and she looked like a completely different person. Lin Yi smiled bitterly and walked over. Flying Sparrow, are you ready? I told you to call me Xiaoka. Why are you calling me Xiaoka? Why are you calling me Flying Sparrow? It sounds so distant, Xiaoka said as she looked up and down at Lin Yi. You came alone? You didn't drive? She didn't know why, but Xiaoka felt that this male thief looked familiar, as if she had seen him somewhere before. Especially his backpack, but he didn't seem to be carrying this backpack last time. It was understandable that Xiaoka didn't think of Lin Yi. She didn't even pay attention to Lin Yi's clothing before. Why would she pay attention to a person that she disliked? Xiaoka, I came with someone. This person is one of my masters. He'll drive over later. Let's wait for him, Lin Yi said. Oh, your master? Xiaoka paused. Lin Yi introduced her to his master. Did that mean he approved of her? Xiaoka had lost her parents at a young age, and her brother wasn't by her side, either. She grew up thinking that her master was the most important thing in the world, and Lin Yi bringing her to his master meant that he approved of her. Xiaoke was very excited. I just found out that he's Zhang Liju's heir, so I wanted to go to the tomb to take a look. Lin Yi didn't tell Xiaoke about his constitution. After all, it wasn't a secret that Lin Yi could talk about, especially with his identity as a male thief. It wasn't something that Lin Yi could do. Doesn't that mean you're Zhang Liju's heir as well? We're going to rob a tomb. Xiaoke jumped and stuck her tongue out. Does that count as betraying my master? Of course not. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Even if Master Zhang Liju was still alive, he'd probably be very happy that his disciples and grand-disciples were going to rob a tomb and get his teachings. After all, everyone wants their sect to be able to last for a long time. He'd only be happy that we got his life's work. That's true, Xiaoke nodded. Then I don't have to worry. Right, did you eat tonight? I did. Lin Yi replied casually. Oh, I ate too. What did you eat? Xiaoke asked. Lin Yi was observing the cars on the road, and when he saw Boss Bai's Audi driving over, Lin Yi said absent-mindedly, Didn't we just eat knife-shaved noodles together? What did you say? Knife-shaved noodles? Xiaoke paused. Oh. Lin Yi realized that he was spacing out and quickly said, I said I was eating knife-shaved noodles with my master. His car is here. Let's go. Chapter 2691. Sorry to keep you waiting, right? Boss Bai didn't recognize Lin Yi's mask, but he recognized Lin Yi's clothes and backpack, so he naturally stopped the car and got off. Xiaoke turned to Lin Yi. What did he call you? Oh, my real name is Lu Yi. Lin Yi randomly made up a name for himself. Lu Yi? Oh, Xiaoke nodded. His name was so similar to Lin Yi's, but his character was worlds apart. If Lin Yi was 1/10 as good as Lu Yi, she wouldn't have to treat him like that. In reality, Xiaoke was blinded by love. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and Lin Yi and Lu Yi were the same person, but she treated them as two extremes. Boss Bai knew that he had made a slip of the tongue. Lin Yi told him that they had to hide their identity when they went to the tomb, but he pointed out Lin Yi's name right away. Luckily, Lin Yi reacted fast and made up a name for himself. On the surface, there didn't seem to be any flaws, or else he would have been exposed. This is Boss Bai. You can also call him Teacher Bai. Lin Yi didn't give Xiaoke too much time to react as he introduced Boss Bai. Hello, Teacher Bai. I'm Lu Yi's friend, Xiaoke. Xiaoke bowed to Boss Bai gently and respectfully. She was a completely different person from her usual impulsive Xiaoke. Haha, hello. I've heard he mention you a lot, Boss Bai said politely. He didn't have to worry about saying the wrong thing now. Is that so? Xiaoke was pleasantly surprised. Even the male thief's teacher mentioned her a lot, so the male thief must have a good impression of her. Let's go now, Boss Bai said. We'll scout the area tonight, and we'll enter the tomb tomorrow morning. Okay, let's go then. Xiaoke nodded and got in the car with him, sitting in the back seat. Lin Yi directed Boss Bai to drive. This time, Lin Yi didn't enter the tomb from the robber's hole but from the exit, which would save him a lot of time and wouldn't be too dangerous. Under the guidance of Lin Yi, the car quickly arrived at the nearest place nearby. They had to walk the rest of the way. Lin Yi and the other two got off the car and walked towards the exit of the ancient tomb. All three of them had very good stamina. Although Boss Bai was no longer a warrior, walking a long distance was not a problem at all. It was just that his speed was not fast enough. An hour later, the three of them arrived at the open space in front of the exit of the tomb. It's here. Lin Yi pointed at the entrance of the tomb. Gigi. Skybolt Pig seemed to have felt the aura of the tomb, and he felt like he had returned home. He immediately cried out excitedly in Lin Yi's bag. Lin Yi just remembered that he'd forgotten to summon the Skybolt Pig. He'd forgotten about this little guy. Skybolt Pig was probably having a hard time. He was beaten by Lin Yi earlier, so he didn't dare to make any noise along the way. Don't disturb him? Boss Bai jumped, afraid that Xiaoke would disturb Lin Yi. Chapter 2692. Haha, it's fine. Lin Yi didn't mind. Lin Yi was multitasking right now. He was healing Boss Bai, observing the situation outside, and chatting with Xiaoka at the same time. When he entered the jade space, he'd practiced multitasking. He had to make sure that he wasn't in danger when he was healing, so it wasn't a big deal if he had to talk to Xiaoka. As for what you said, whether or not I can heal others depends on the situation, Lin Yi said with a smile. Lin Yi didn't say anything definite because he didn't want to promise Xiaoka that he wouldn't be able to do it. Nothing was absolute, and Lin Yi didn't dare to guarantee anything. However, it seemed that Udake was very loyal to him. Udake didn't tell Xiaoka the details of Lin Yi healing him. Otherwise, Xiaoka wouldn't have asked this question. No, it was messed up again. Lin Yi shook his head. Lin Yi was the one who healed Udake, and his current identity was the male thief, Lin Yi. Oh, do you have a way to heal my injury? Xiaoka felt that she was asking too much after asking. Lin Yi might have to pay a huge price to heal Boss Bai, but it was his, and he wouldn't complain about it. But would he do the same for her? We'll see. Lin Yi didn't agree right away because he didn't know the past of the orphanage's director. From his perspective, there should be an unknown story behind the director, just like Faubert. Before Lin Yi figured out the pros and cons, he couldn't act rashly. Otherwise, if the director's enemies found out and tracked him here, wouldn't that cause trouble for him? Okay. Xiaoka could hear the perfunctory tone in Lin Yi's voice, but she was satisfied. After all, Lin Yi was a complete stranger to her, and asking a stranger to heal another stranger was a bit too much. Since Lin Yi said that he would wait and see, he must have taken her relationship into consideration. That was why he said that. While they were talking, Boss Bai felt that his wounded veins were recovering at an unbelievable speed. Boss Bai was adept at alchemy and pharmacology. He knew that no elixir, not even the ultra-quality Great Recovery Pill, could have such a rapid and marvelous effect. It was beyond his imagination. Any elixir was more awesome than he had imagined. No wonder Lin Yi said those words with such confidence. It turned out that Lin Yi had the confidence. In fact, the first level of the art of dragon mastery was already amazing when it healed people, and the second level was even faster, which was why Boss Bai was so shocked. Done? You're completely healed? Boss Bai stood up in disbelief and moved his body. He found that his wounds were all healed. It was unbelievable. His chronic illness was suddenly gone. Boss Bai didn't know what to say. Done? So fast? Xiaoka was surprised as well. She thought that healing Boss Bai was a daily task and that it would be a long process. But now, it seemed that Boss Bai was healed in just a short while. If Xiaoka didn't know the male thief's personality, she would have thought that Lin Yi and Boss Bai were scammers. Not to mention healing internal injuries. Even normal injuries couldn't be healed this quickly. Haha, it's all right. Lin Yi said, don't worry about your injuries. It's good that you know that I can heal people, but don't tell anyone. It's not good for me if more people know. Yes, don't worry, I won't tell her. Before you decide to heal me, I won't tell her either. Xiaoka quickly guaranteed. After the tomb robbery incident last time, she had a better understanding of how evil people could be. She naturally knew that some people were greedy, and if she told anyone about the male thief, it would bring him a lot of trouble. All right, Master Bai, should we continue to increase your strength now? Lin Yi asked. Now? Don't you need to rest? Boss Bai was a little surprised Lin Yi had just healed him, and it must have used up a lot of qi. He was surprised that Lin Yi wanted to increase his strength now. No need. We can do it now, Lin Yi said. Hurry up and start. Let's try to finish it before the sun rises tomorrow. You're done so soon? Boss Bai was even more surprised. He only realized today that Lin Yi's ability was far beyond his imagination. In time to come, Lin Yi might really be his hope to revive the Five Elements sect. Yes. Lin Yi nodded. Teacher Bai, you just need to start channeling your practitioner's arts now. You don't need to do anything else. There'll be some pain when you level up, but you'll be recovering your strength, so the pain should be less. Okay, I understand. Boss Bai nodded and started to use the martial arts according to Lin Yi's instructions. Lin Yi grabbed Boss Bai's pulse and started to use the second stage of the art of dragon mastery. Boss Bai felt a stream of pure qi flowing into his meridians. Boss Bai was shocked, but he quickly started to work hard. It didn't take long for Boss Bai to enter the golden class from a normal person, becoming a golden class master in the early phase. Boss Bai didn't hide his strength at all, and this change in strength made Xiaoka speechless. But in the next moment, Xiaoka's shock turned into admiration. Not only could this male thief heal people's injuries quickly, but he could also increase their strength quickly as well. If this was real, would she be able to return to her peak strength when she wasn't injured? The old dean of the orphanage looked like an old lady, but Xiaoka knew that she wasn't very old. She was only 40 years old, and if she took good care of herself, she would look very youthful. But the old dean's face was full of wrinkles. This was all caused by internal injuries that blocked up the meridians in her body, and the dean had forcefully recovered a portion of her strength, causing her body to age prematurely. If Linny could heal her injuries and recover them, she'd probably be many years younger in an instant. In fact, Xiaoka's guess was right. Grandma's son was like this. After Linny healed her, she looked like she was only in her early 30s, completely different from the old scavenger. Chapter 2693. Although Linny said that he could speak when he was channeling his practitioner's arts, Boss Bai couldn't. He didn't want to be distracted, afraid that his meridians would be blocked again. Early phase of golden class, early phase peak, mid phase of golden class, late phase of golden class, late phase of golden class, late phase of golden class, early phase of mystic class. Boss Bai's strength kept increasing, and Xiaoka's expression changed from shock and admiration to expressionless now. She was used to it. There was a saying, shock and surprise. You'll get used to it. Naturally, Boss Bai was used to it as well. He was numb to leveling up, and he finally believed Linny when he said that he could go all the way to Mystic Class late phase peak. Phew. Finally, Boss Bai felt that Linny had stopped transferring chi, and his strength stopped at late phase peak of Earth Class. He stood up and let out a long breath. Boss Bai, am back. Can my master recover this strength as well? Xiaoka looked at Linny hopefully. Yes, Linny nodded. As long as I'm sure. Thank you. Xiaoka nodded gratefully. She knew that if it was possible, Linny would do it. He wasn't someone who made promises easily. Is it really that amazing? I recovered just like that? Boss Bai only felt that his body was full of energy, and he looked a few years younger. And here's a small chi gathering pill. Take it. Lin Yi took out a small chi gathering pill and gave it to Boss Bai. This isn't too good, right? I'm already very grateful, and I still need your pill. Boss Bai was a little embarrassed. Master Bai, aren't you Lu Yi's master? Why are you being so polite? Xiaoka felt strange. In her eyes, it was perfectly normal for a disciple to give something to his master and help him heal. There was no need for too much explanation, but Boss Bai was so grateful that it didn't seem like they were master and disciple. Even teachers can't accept things from students casually. Boss Bai shook his head. All right, Mr. Bai, I've already said it. Why are you still so polite? Lin Yi forcefully stuffed the small chi-gathering pill into Boss Bai's hand. Well, if that's the case, I won't stand on ceremony. Boss Bai took a deep breath. He took the pill and swallowed it. A pure stream of true chi spread out from his dantian. Boss Bai hurriedly held his breath and operated his inner force mantra to dissolve the medicinal effect of the pill. Xiaoka looked at the white boss enviously and whispered to Lin Yi, male thief. I want to practice spiritual chi too. Can you help me? Sure. Lin Yi didn't hesitate this time and directly agreed. But do you have a suitable cultivation method? Yes. My brother said that my family has a secret art that has been passed down from generation to generation. It's suitable for girls to learn. Xiaoka said, that's the spiritual art. Can you help me increase my strength? That's possible. Linny nodded. But why doesn't your brother practice it? Right. Since when did you have a brother? Oh, I didn't get to tell you yet. I found my long-lost brother. His name is Udake. He's a guy that I really hate, a guy who's chasing after me. Sigh. Although I'm very grateful to him, I already have you in my heart. I can't agree to him. Xiaoka sighed lightly. Oh, what's his name? Linny asked, pretending not to know. He almost exposed himself today, so he had to clear his name. Otherwise, Xiaoka would find out sooner or later. Never mind. You wouldn't know him even if I told you. Let's not talk about him. Xiaoka didn't say Lin Yi's name. She was afraid that the male thief would cause trouble for Lin Yi. Lin Yi was quite strong now, and Xiaoka was afraid that the male thief wouldn't be able to fight him. Let's talk about my family's secret art. This spiritual art is pure Yin, and I heard that it's a very powerful ancient art. Men can't practice it, only girls can. Oh, that's quite magical. It should be a special art, or else it wouldn't be called a family art. Lin Yi knew of some weird arts that could only be practiced by specific people. For example, Xiao Xiao's and his. Weren't they also pure young arts? Girls couldn't practice it, which was the opposite of Xiaoka's. Yeah, it's quite magical, Xiaoka said. My brother said he'll find a chance to give it to me. Okay, I'll help you look into it. Lin Yi nodded. Xiaoka did need to increase her strength a little, or else she'd be too weak and always doing dangerous things. Lin Yi really couldn't be at ease. Xiaoka was very happy. The male thief didn't give her a direct answer about her master, but he agreed to help her without hesitation. Xiaoka felt that the male thief really cared about her. Boss Bai was a patient man, and while the breakthrough of the small rejuvenation pill was a little painful, he didn't show any signs of it from his expression. If it weren't for his strong willpower, he wouldn't have been able to last until now after losing all his meridians. Thank you. Boss Bai, who had broken through to Earth Class early phase, said to Lin Yi gratefully, but with my current strength, I can only make Yellow Class 2nd level pills. I can't make Yellow Class 3rd level pills yet. The chi supply can't keep up. Lin Yi nodded. Boss Bai was a 2nd level Golden Class refiner, and with the addition of Guan Xian and Han Jingjing, it wouldn't be a problem for Lin Yi to refine a 3rd level elixir if that combined practitioner's arts really worked and Lin Yi could practice it. The only limitation was that each practitioner could only practice one type of practitioner's art. Lin Yi couldn't change the one he was practicing. I told you, no need to thank me. Lin Yi waved his hand. It's already daylight. Should we rest for a bit before going? Or should we go straight? Let's go straight. I'm full of energy right now. I don't need to rest at all. Boss Bai said, plus, I can't wait. What about you, Xiaoka? Lin Yi turned to look at Xiaoka. I'm fine. I also rested for a bit before. Xiaoka shook her head, indicating that she was fine. Although Lin Yi was a practitioner and wasn't afraid of ghosts, he couldn't say that it didn't exist. However, it couldn't be said that this thing didn't exist. Otherwise, where did the damn thing in the jade come from? Yes, Xiaoka said solemnly. This bookshelf probably hasn't been touched for thousands of years, so there's a layer of dust on the spines. But look, below this book. Lin Yi and Boss Bai bent down at the same time. They looked at the book Xiaoka was pointing at, and as expected, on the empty wooden shelf in front of the book, there was a mark of someone moving it. There was a mark of someone moving it. Because there was a layer of dust everywhere, only the front of this book had a vertical groove. Someone must have pulled out the dust from the front of this web page recently and removed it. Seeing this, Boss Bai didn't feel anything, but Lin Yi felt a chill run down his spine. This tomb, did someone else come here? When they first came here, no matter if it was Xiaoka, Old He, or Yu Huaxing, none of them touched the books. Yu Huaxing checked the names on the books carefully, but didn't touch them. Lin Yi remembered this clearly, but now, there was a book here that had been moved, from the marks. This book had been put back no more than 3 months ago. This could be seen from the markings on it, so it couldn't be from the last time they came. The only explanation was that someone else came in, took this book, and put it back. But what was the purpose of doing this? Xiaoka's breathing quickened as well. The few people who knew about this were all captured and sentenced to death. She and the male thief definitely didn't come back. Could it be Yu Huaxing, or the female thief? Lin Yi thought of Yu Huaxing as well, but this person was as cowardly as a mouse. There was no reason for him to come back alone. Plus, everything was taken last time. So what was the point of him coming back? Plus, Lin Yi heard that Yu Huaxing was under house arrest by the hidden house Yu. Even if he wanted to come out, there was no chance. Whatever. Let's see what this book is first, Lin Yi said. Xiaoka took the book out, and Lin Yi kept an eye on the jade. Luckily, there was no movement, which meant that there was no danger. Lin Yi was most afraid that this book was a trap set up by someone else to lure people in. This was a book written by a wandering doctor, But when Lin Yi flipped to the first page, he realized that something was different. This book was indeed a record of strange stories of wandering doctors, but the empty space in the book was filled with handwriting, all of it in tiny handwriting. It was the same handwriting as the one in Zhang Liju's Elixir Refiner's notes. Evidently, this was written by Zhang Liju as well. This is it. This is the record of strange tales of the patriarch. Boss looked at the book in Lin Yi's hands excitedly and pointed at the words on it. Master Zhang added on to someone else's records of strange happenings, giving his own unique insights, and the problem of a refiner's physique was mentioned in this records of strange happenings at the very beginning. It's normal for Master Zhang Liju to add to it after reading it. Chapter 2695. If this watchnet was taken away, then this time, even if they turned the tomb upside down, they would not be able to find what they wanted. Let me see the problem about your physique now. While talking, Boss Bai did not waste any time. He took out the flashlight and carefully read the content of the Chronicle of Peculiar Tales. Lin Yi and Yu Xiaoke did not dare to disturb him. They quietly waited on the side, waiting for Boss Bai's result. Time passed very slowly at this time. Although Lin Yi only waited for half an hour, it felt like half a day. Finally, Boss Bai put down the book, nodded heavily, and said to Lin Yi, in this note, the Grandmaster explained the problem about the physique of a cultivator in detail, and gave the way to verify it. Oh? What do you mean? Lin Yi asked quickly. The physique of a cultivator is divided into 3 types: true attribute, false attribute, and false attribute. The true attribute is an inborn attribute. No matter how many attributes there are in the body, they can be well integrated and circulated. This is inborn, so there will not be any conflict between each attribute. Even if there is a conflict, it will also form a cycle in the body and will not bring any trouble to the cultivator. Boss Bai said, true attribute, false attribute, false attribute? Lin Yi pondered for a while and thought of Bingtang's false ice heart jade bone physique. So he hurriedly told this to Boss Bai. Is this the false attribute mentioned in the book? Yes, this is the false attribute. Boss Bai nodded and said, this attribute is also inborn. It exists in the body of a cultivator when he is born. However, before this attribute is activated, it will not cause any impact or conflict with the real attribute in the body. When it is activated, it can be activated with the corresponding elixir. For example, the Ice Heart Jade Bone elixir can be used to activate this branch of the water attribute, which is the ice attribute. After activation, the false attribute is no different from the real attribute. If the cultivator has other attributes in the body, there will not be any conflict, and these attributes will form a new cycle. I see. What about the false attribute? Lin Yi suddenly understood. No wonder the Ice Heart Jade Bone pill was so important to Bingtang. It turned out that it could change the physique, turning the fake Ice Heart Jade Bone physique into the real Ice Heart Jade Bone physique. The so-called virtual attribute is that the cultivator's body doesn't have this attribute in the beginning, but through the consumption of the corresponding elixir or the cultivation of some special mental cultivation method, the attribute produced in the body is called virtual attribute. Boss Bai said, for example, a person with the wood attribute will have the fire attribute after taking a scorching fire pill, and he can become an alchemist, as long as there are no more than 3 attributes in his body. There would be no mutual restraint, and there would be no cycle. The illusory attribute and the true attribute can coexist. Oh, in other words, the attributes in my body are all virtual attributes? Lin Yi was stunned. But I haven't taken any elixirs that can change my physique, right? I'm not sure about that, but it says that the attributes inside the body can be tested through a treasure to see if they are real, false, or virtual. Boss Bai said, however, it seems that the attributes inside the body are not real. There's no doubt that your body has the phantom attribute. Lin Yi nodded. Could it be that his phantom attribute was increased by the art of dragon mastery? This was the only way to explain it. He hadn't taken any elixir that could change his physique. As for the mental cultivation method, there was only this one, so it seemed to be the case. Is there any mention of the solution to the phantom attribute? Lin Yi asked. There is, but there's no mention of the method. It's only mentioned a little. The specifics are all left in the sect's library. Boss Bai said with some regret. The five-element sect's library? Lin Yi listened to Boss Bai's words and asked with a slight sigh. That's right. But with my current identity, there's no way to go back and check. Boss Bai said apologetically. I understand that. Lin Yi nodded. If Boss Bai went back, it was likely that he couldn't come back alive. So, Lin Yi couldn't let him take the risk. What about the solution? Accept the inheritance. Boss Bai said, under special circumstances, the phantom attribute can accept the inheritance. Whichever attribute in the cultivator's body is the phantom attribute, he can go to the origin of this attribute and stimulate it. If he can stimulate the origin of this attribute, he can receive the inheritance and directly upgrade the phantom attribute in the body to the real attribute. Oh, that means I have to accept the inheritance like rock candy? Lin Yi asked with some surprise. Yes, but their inheritance means that they have the real attribute or the pseudo-attribute. They don't need to upgrade their attribute. They can directly accept the inheritance and obtain the origin power. But you are different. You need to use a special method, similar to a formation, to stimulate the origin of the attribute and the origin of the attribute, so as to change and upgrade the attribute of your physique. Boss Bai explained, it's just that I don't have this method in the five-element sect's library. There's also no specific mention in this record of strange stories. Phew. Lin Yi let out a long sigh. He came to the ancient tomb with a heart full of joy, but in the end, he found out the problem of the physique. In the five-element sect, it was impossible for Lin Yi to obtain the method to change the physique. Don't be too disappointed. Chapter 2696. Boss Bai shook his head and explained, but the power of origin is different. Any practitioner with the right body type can accept the inheritance and become an inheritor. There's no limit to that. One is the comprehension of the power, the other is the activation of the body type's original element. There's a fundamental difference between the two. The first is personal comprehension. It won't give you anything all of a sudden, but it'll make your training smoother in the future. The other is obtaining the original elemental. I see. Lin Yi, on the other hand, felt relieved. This trip wasn't a waste. At least he knew something about the inheritors. In other words, even if Xiao Xiao accepted the inheritance, as long as she didn't do that dangerous thing, she'd only get the benefit of increasing her training speed. There wouldn't be any downsides. So, after Xiao Xiao accepted the inheritance, Bingtang could accept it as well. As long as Lin Yi could change her body type, she could replace Xiao Xiao. With that thought, Lin Yi made up his mind. He needed to train hard and reach Sky Class as soon as possible, and then continue to increase Boss Bai, Han Jingjing, and Guan Xi in strength. Chapter Dan. He could ask the three of them to help him concoct pills. Although Lin Yi wouldn't be able to become an alchemist and wouldn't be able to satisfy Bingtang's requirements to be his little wife, Lin Yi didn't really care. He wanted to make Bingtang a little wife. He just wanted to take her down a notch. He wasn't used to her cold and arrogant attitude towards him, but compared to Xiao Xiao's safety, Xiao Xiao was more important. According to this book, this treasure that can identify a practitioner's body type is in the last stone door. Let's go take a look. Boss Bai said, but he reminded, here, Zhang Liju also hinted to us that there's a poisonous mist in the last stone door, and those who get hit will lose their vision. But there's an antidote here. As long as it's someone who knows medicine, they can do it. Oh? Lin Yi paused, remembering Yu Huashing back then. It seemed that Zhang Liju had guessed that people would come to this tomb in the future, but these things were left for doctors or refiners. It was left for doctors or alchemists of the same profession. Towards a simple grave robber like Yu Huashing, there was no mercy. If this person had checked the internet records, then they would definitely be on the same path, and naturally wouldn't fall for it. Even if the person in the tunnel didn't check, he would be able to detoxify the poison on his own. The tragic ones were people like Yu Huashing. But what puzzled Lin Yi was that this book had been flipped by someone. Could it be that the people who came to Ancient Tomb knew that this book would hint at the mechanism of the last stone door, so they checked it? Since he already knew about this mechanism, why did he still want to check it out? Could it be that he was here to check the antidote formula? These doubts made Lin Yi feel baffled. I can't figure it out. However, if that was the case, the grave robber must have been to the last stone door. Let's go and take a look. Lin Yi took a deep breath. He hoped that the treasure he needed wasn't stolen by this grave robber. Otherwise, it would be a wasted trip. The three of them walked towards the last stone door. They didn't go to the exhibition room, but instead came to the stone door. Lin Yi placed his hand on the stone door, not pushing it open immediately. He was waiting for the jade to give him a warning signal. School Beauty's Personal Expert, Chapter 2707. Lost the item was lost. Lin Yi couldn't be sure if this grave robber had set up any new mechanisms, or if this person was still in the tomb. What made Lin Yi relieved was that the jade didn't give off any warning signals. Lin Yi relaxed a little as he pushed the door open, but Lin Yi thought of something. Right, Zhang Liju's medical notes said that he didn't have any children, nor did he have any disciples. What's with the Five Elements sect then? Oh, that's normal, Boss Bai said. In the Five Elements sect now, only me and Xinshan have disciples. Xuanjin doesn't have any, but after 1,000 years, the disciples of the Five Elements sect will call him their ancestor. It's normal. Having no disciples just means that he doesn't have a disciple, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have disciples from the same sect. I see. Lin Yi nodded. Mr. Bai, take a look. Which one of these is a treasure used to test one's constitution? The white boss looked around the room, and the School Beauty's personal expert, Xiaoke, was also carefully looking at the items in the room. Before the white boss could say anything, Xiaoke spoke up first. Male thief, someone was here too? Oh? Lin Yi wasn't too surprised. With the precedent of the records of strange events being taken out, it was normal that the items here had been touched. What Lin Yi was worried about was whether or not the item he was looking for had been taken away. Here, it's been touched. Xiaoke had a good memory, and she was good at observing. She pointed at a shelf in front of Zhang Liju's bed. Here, there used to be something like an incense burner, but it's been taken away. Look, there are traces of it being taken away. Oh, incense burner? Lin Yi and Boss Bai looked at where Xiaoke was pointing. Indeed, on the shelf, there was a circular mark. There was no dust on it, but around the original shape, there was a lot of dust. This proved that there used to be something here, but now it was taken away. The things in this room didn't seem to have been touched. Other than the 2 books that you took, no one else took anything else. Xiaoke said after some thought. Lin Yi nodded. That was indeed the case. Old He had taken a lot of things from the showroom, and he didn't take anything here. Yu Huaxing came with a purpose, so naturally, he didn't take anything. Xiaoke wouldn't have taken anything, either, or she wouldn't have said that. Lingshan and Yutian wouldn't have touched anything either. It seemed that the item Xiaoke was talking about had been taken away by someone else. Lin Yi frowned. Incense burner. Suddenly, Lin Yi thought of something. There was indeed something like an incense burner here, but it wasn't an incense burner. It was a cauldron. Lin Yi didn't think about becoming a refiner back then, so he didn't pay much attention to this cauldron. Otherwise, Lin Yi would have taken it away without a doubt. At that thought, Lin Yi was filled with regret. Lin Yi suddenly remembered something very important. Chapter 2697. Back then, Lin Yi had felt a sense of familiarity, as if he had seen it somewhere before, but he couldn't remember where. Now that Xiaoke reminded him, he suddenly remembered that the cauldron Yu Coiling Tiger brought back was very similar to the one Lin Yi saw in Zhang Liju's tomb. As for why it was similar and not exactly the same, it was because Lin Yi's memory was a bit blurry, and he couldn't remember what the cauldron looked like exactly. However, no matter what, Lin Yi understood that he had missed out on a great thing. This cauldron was definitely a great thing, but it was taken away. Shaking his head, Lin Yi put the cauldron aside for now and turned to Xiaoke. Other than that cauldron, was there anything else taken away? I didn't find anything. Xiaoke shook her head. At this time, Boss Bai exclaimed, I found it. The treasure is at the bottom of this shelf. Lin Yi and Xiaoke looked at the direction Boss Bai was pointing at. It was a big round bead, and it looked gray. It didn't look like anything good at all. Even if someone came to rob a tomb, they would probably ignore this stone-like thing. How do I use it? Lin Yi looked at the big bead in front of him and asked. It's actually very simple. You just need to put your hand on it and chant the mantra. Boss Bai said, according to the colors that the bead shows, I can determine your constitution. Oh, okay. Linny nodded and placed his hand on top of the bead, channeling the art of dragon mastery. In an instant, the gray bead changed into a different shape. On the surface of the bead, there were 7 different colors. However, each of the colors was not particularly bright, and the center of each color was hollow. Boss Bai saw the colors on the bead, and his face was full of surprise and excitement. He didn't say anything for a while, and only after a while did he say, it's the 5 elements and 7 constitutions, but each of them is fake. In your body, there isn't a real or fake one. Oh, 5 elements and 7 elements constitution? Are they all imaginary? What kind of physique is that? Lin Yi was stunned. He was also shocked by Boss Bai's words. He actually had the so-called 5 elements and 7 elements physique, but they were all fake and not a single one of them was real? That's right. According to the records, if each attribute is a color, then this 5-element ball can display a total of 7 colors, representing the metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and the ice and fog attributes derived from the water element. Boss Bai explained, if it's a completely solid bright strip, it represents the true attribute. If it's a half-solid strip, it represents the false attribute. But a hollow, dim strip like this one represents the false attribute. The 5 elements and 7 constitutions means that your body has the attributes of the 5 elements at the same time, but you also have the 3 constitutions of water, ice, and mist. There are 7 constitutions altogether, so it's called the 5 elements and 7 constitutions. After listening to Boss Bai's words, Lin Yi's eyes widened, but he was a little speechless. His physique was really awesome. Of course, if it was the real 5 elements and 7 constitutions, then it would probably be rare in the world. But he just happened to have the false attribute. The 5 elements could not form a cycle, and it became a situation where they restrained each other, making it impossible for him to become an alchemist. Then, this kind of physique? What's going on? Linny was stunned for a long time before he hurriedly asked, you don't have any real attribute in your body. According to what the cultivation world usually says, you're a cultivation loser. Even if you can cultivate, it's absolutely impossible for you to cultivate to a high level. Although you can create the false attribute, the cultivation speed of the false attribute is obviously slower than that of the real attribute and the false attribute. Boss Bai said, but you just happen to have so many false attributes, and your cultivation speed is not slow either. It's really strange. Linny couldn't help but smile bitterly. He knew himself best. His cultivation speed was fast. It seemed to be quite fast, but without the space of the jade pendant, without Wang Xinyan, would his cultivation speed still be fast? The answer was obviously no, because if Lin Yi didn't have these advantages, he would still be a lone cultivator, and would probably be left behind by other cultivators a long time ago. However, even if you accept the inheritance of the original attribute, it's still very troublesome, because you need to go to 5 attributes and 7 origins to accept the inheritance. It's really too troublesome. Boss Bai said a little helplessly. In other words, there's no other way for now? Linny asked. For now, that's it. Boss Bai spread his hands and smiled bitterly. Well, if that's the case, then I can't force anything. Linny didn't dwell on it too much. It was already good enough that he could figure out the problem of his constitution. As for turning his constitution into real attributes, Lin Yi didn't think it was realistic for now. By the way, you just said that an incense burner is missing here? Boss Bai looked at the place where something was missing and asked. Yes, it's a medicine cauldron. It was still here when I left, but it's gone this time. Obviously, it was taken away by someone who touched the record of extraordinary stories. Linny said, oh, a medicine cauldron? Boss Bai was slightly dazed, and then asked, what medicine cauldron? What does it look like? The medicine cauldron here must be something good, but it was taken away by someone. Boss Bai was very regretful. If he came earlier, it wouldn't be like this, right? This medicine cauldron is like this. Right, coiling tiger used to exchange some things with me with a broken one. That broken medicine cauldron should be very similar to this one. I have a picture of the broken medicine cauldron here. As he spoke, Linny took out his phone and showed a picture to Boss Bai. What? Shenong cauldron? Boss Bai looked at the picture of the medicine cauldron in Lin Yi's hand and widened his eyes in surprise. What Shenong cauldron? Linny was stunned and thought, is it really something good? Chapter 2698. Boss Bai explained to Lin Yi in detail. Shenong used this cauldron to make hundreds of elixirs and medicines, and because of the 1,000 years of accumulation of elixir qi, it was said to be able to make unparalleled elixirs. The real one has been lost for a long time, but our sect's founder, Zhang Liju, had a replica Shenong cauldron. Although it wasn't as powerful as the real one, it had been passed down by many elixir masters, and it was quite powerful. It was said that it could even make mystic level 1 elixirs. What? It's that powerful? Linny heard Boss Bai's words and regretted it. Linny didn't know what it was, and he didn't know how precious it was, so he just ignored it. But now, Linny realized that he had missed a huge opportunity. Linny even tried so hard to find a third-level cauldron, but he didn't know that there was at least a mystic level 1 Shenong cauldron replica right in front of him, and he couldn't grab it. Yeah, what a shame, what a shame. Boss Bai didn't really care about the picture in Lin Yi's hand. After all, the cauldron was already broken to this extent, and there was no way to fix it, even if it was the real one. So what? What he cared about was the replica that Zhang Liju had used before, and he missed it. Whatever, it's fine if we lose it. Maybe this cauldron doesn't belong to us, and it's already good enough that we have it now. Linny was quite optimistic. That's true. I was a bit greedy. Boss Bai nodded. Since this is the tomb of the founder, then everything is arranged by him. We can't force it. Is there anything else we can take away? Linny looked around the room and asked. Nope, including this bead for the test. Leave it here as well. It's useless to take it back. Boss Bai put the bead back to where it was before. Let's go pay our respects to Master Zhang Liju now? Okay. Linny nodded and patted Skybolt Pig's head. Skybolt Pig, let's go pay our respects to Master Zhang Liju. Is there a problem? Last time, when Lin Yi came to the tomb, he didn't go to the main chamber to disturb Zhang Liju's soul, but his identity was different this time. Naturally, he had to follow by Boss to pay his respects, and it was inevitable that he would disturb the owner of this chamber. Oink oink. Skybolt Pig nodded and brought Lin Yi, Boss Bai, and Xiaoka out of the stone room, heading towards the main tomb. He arrived at the entrance of the main burial chamber. Just as Linny was about to stop them from entering, the Skybolt Pig had already warned them. It stood at the entrance of the main burial chamber and shook its head. It squeaked, indicating that no one should enter. Other than the white boss, who was slightly stunned, Lin Yi and Xiaoka both understood that there must be some kind of mechanism in the main tomb, which was why the pig acted like this. After Skybolt Pig opened the mechanism of the stone door, he entered the main burial chamber first. Sure enough, it was familiar with the route. It touched a few parts that weren't too noticeable before returning to the entrance of the main burial chamber and nodded to everyone. GG. All right, we can go in now. There was a mechanism in this chamber, and Skybolt Pig closed it. Linny explained to the white boss. Oh, I see. The white boss didn't encounter any traps or dangers along the way, and he wasn't a professional grave robber. He didn't know much about these things, and after Lin Yi's words, he realized and nodded. The three entered the main burial chamber together, and the stone door behind them closed. This was a very simple main burial chamber. In the corner of one of the walls of the main burial chamber, there was a huge coffin. Near the coffin, there was nothing else. It was so barren that it seemed a little out of place. However, on the stone wall of the main burial chamber, there were a lot of words written. Linny glanced at them briefly, and it was about Zhang Liju's life experiences. Linny and Boss Bai stood together respectfully in front of the coffin, paying their respects to Zhang Liju's grandmaster. Boss Bai was a little emotional. Although there was a ranking of the grandmasters in 5 Elements sect, standing in front of the coffin of Zhang Liju, the most famous elixir refiner in history, Boss Bai couldn't help but feel emotional. A sense of pride that had been suppressed for many years rose from the bottom of his heart. In the past, the white boss thought that he was useless, and that he would live the rest of his life aimlessly. At that time, his only goal in life was to find a wood elemental inheritor for the five-element sect and teach him everything he had learned in his life. As for Schwanchen's plot and usurpation, the White Boss was really helpless, and he couldn't help the five-element sect. If he wanted the five-element sect to flourish, the only way was to cooperate with Xianxin and help the evildoer. However, after meeting Lin Yi, the White Boss suddenly realized that his future was bright, and returning to the five-element sect, and even regaining control of the five-element sect wasn't a difficult thing. All of this was like the guidance of Zhang Liju, sending Lin Yi to him, giving him hope. The White Boss swore in his heart that he wouldn't disappoint Zhang Liju's hope. One day, he would revive the five-element sect and let it return to the glory of thousands of years ago. Fu. The White Boss let out a long breath and said, "Let's take a look at Zhang Liju's life experiences and leave. This time, it's over, all right?" Lin Yi nodded solemnly. This trip to the tomb was different from last time. Lin Yi had officially joined the five-element sect and had become a part of it. Standing in front of Zhang Liju's coffin, his mood was naturally different. Lin Yi quietly picked up the pig and looked at the wall with him. The introduction of Zhang Liju's life experiences. This little guy could read, and Lin Yi planned to let him read it as well to recall the past. "You guys read it. I'll just look around here and see if there's anything good." Xiaoke wasn't very interested in Zhang Liju's life experiences. Lin Yi nodded and didn't say anything else. He started reading the words on the wall with the White Boss. Zhang Liju's life was dedicated to the study of medicine and elixir refinement. There were countless recipes and elixirs that had been improved by him, and it wasn't uncommon to see lost ancient elixirs reappearing in his hands. Chapter 2699. Good, very good. Lin Yi's eyes turned cold as he looked at the young guard. "What? You don't like it? It's useless even if you don't like it." The guard curled his lips and said mockingly, "An Earth-class mid-phase peak? Don't you know what your name is? Don't you know what kind of place this is? Is this a place for you bunch of idiots to mess around? You're used to doing whatever you want outside, and you still dare to act tough in front of me? Boss, why don't we?" Han Xiaopa took a deep breath, suppressing the anger in his heart. He was the young master of a hidden house, after all. Although the hidden house used to be the last-ranked hidden house, ever since the Hidden House Summit, their name had shaken the world. Everyone knew that his hidden house had Lin Yi's backing. However, Han Xiaopa knew that Lin Yi wanted to trade here, and he couldn't afford to offend the guards just yet. He couldn't just not go to the market, could he? Han Xiaopa's words clearly showed that he was giving in, and the others could see that he was prepared to give some gifts. Of course, the others were a bit confused as well. They didn't know what these two guards were thinking, suddenly giving an Earth class a hard time. This made the Earth classes behind Lin Yi and Han Xiaopa a little uneasy. Would it be their turn to be in trouble? Lin Yi nodded, and the two guards saw Lin Yi nod, and the disdain on their faces deepened. They thought that Lin Yi had agreed with Han Xiaopa and that he was giving them some gifts. Of course, there was a condition to this, and their goal was the blue crystal in Lin Yi's hand. The skinny guy had already told them about what had happened, and this was also the reason why these two guards were giving Lin Yi a hard time. They were determined to get the blue crystal, and not only did they want to take it back, but they also wanted to humiliate Lin Yi's group. They wanted to show him who was in charge of this place. Trying to show off in front of the association? Did they still want to come here to trade in the future? However, Lin Yi's giving in was reasonable to them. After all, they were here to make money. Who would dare to openly offend them? Xiaopa, you're right. Some people don't want face, so we'll beat them until they give in. As Lin Yi spoke, he suddenly made a move and slapped the young guard's face, making a crisp sound. Lin Yi's slap was very sudden. The young guard didn't think that Lin Yi would dare to slap him here. It was understandable that Lin Yi dared to hit the skinny guy, since Lin Yi didn't know the skinny guy's real identity. But the two guards represented the association, and they and Yi were the absolute authority here. Did Lin Yi say that, or was Lin Yi an idiot? King don't want to? You little bastard. You dare hit me? The young guard covered his face, his eyes full of disbelief and anger. King wanna die? With that, The young guard channeled his inner force and punched towards Lin Yi, Earth-class martial technique, ninth form, sky-piercing fist. This young guard was truly enraged. He immediately used his strongest move to attack Lin Yi. His goal was to hit Lin Yi in one hit. Even if he didn't kill Lin Yi, he would at least cripple him. Although the difference between late-stage and mid-stage Earth class wasn't that big, the young guard needed to be at the peak of late-stage Earth class to use the ninth form. Lin Yi laughed coldly. He didn't dodge, but used the fifth form of the fiery 8 trigrams palm. Although Lin Yi's strongest technique was the fifth form of the fiery 8 trigrams palm, against a late-stage Earth class master, the fifth form was more than enough. It was equivalent to the 11th form of a normal sky-class martial technique. How could it not deal with him? This punch, the young guard gave it his all, not holding back at all. He used all his Zhanqi, and his goal was to kill Lin Yi. In his eyes, Lin Yi was just a small mid-stage Earth-class master, and yet he dared to act so rashly. This wasn't just a slap to his face, it was the entire association's face, and the face of his vice president. Boom! The young guard's fist collided with Lin Yi's palm, and a huge amount of Zhanqi burst out from the center of the collision, causing the surrounding people to be pushed back a few steps. These were all Earth-class masters, even Mystic and Golden-class masters. Normally, when had they ever seen a mid-stage Earth-class master clash head-on? The surging aura swept all these people. Although they weren't injured, they didn't feel good either. The young guard spat out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body was sent flying by Lin Yi a few meters away. He landed on the ground, motionless, and no one knew if he was dead or alive. However, looking at his arm that had been smashed into a meat patty by Lin Yi, and half of his chest was caved in, even if he was still alive, he wouldn't be far from death. Even if he was saved with a medicinal pill, he definitely wouldn't be able to recover his previous strength. Lin Yi's decisiveness shocked everyone present. Even Han Xiaopa's eyes were full of shock. Wasn't Lin Yi a little too fierce? He said he would kill, and he just killed the opponent? The others, on the other hand, were trying to guess Lin Yi's background and strength. With the strength of a mid-stage Earth-class master, he completely defeated a late-stage Earth-class master, and it was decided in one move. How domineering was this? What kind of strength was this? But Yang Qiqi wasn't too surprised. Lin Yi's performance was already very domineering, and in her eyes, Lin Yi was already a big villain. Lin Yi had forcefully taken her blue crystal, and although he didn't take it directly from her hands, Yang Qiqi still saw him as the main culprit. Chapter 2700. These ingredients were extinct, and so even with the recipe and the corresponding refiner, no one would be able to make these elixirs. Qi-gathering elixirs were one of them, but through Zhang Liju's hands, some of the extinct ingredients were replaced with existing ones, and although the effect was reduced, it was still able to achieve some of the same effects as Qi-gathering elixirs. This was also one of the miracles of Zhang Liju. Back in the day, Zhang Liju had gathered a large number of masters around him, and because of this, with Zhang Liju around, they had endless resources. However, changing the recipe wasn't a difficult thing for Lin Yi, and Lin Yi could easily do it with his abilities. But when it came to elixir, Lin Yi's body made it impossible for him to make elixirs. Lin Yi finished reading Zhang Liju's life story, and so did Boss Bai. He turned to Lin Yi, let's go? Okay. Lin Yi replied and called Yu Xiaoka. Xiaoka, let's go. But when Lin Yi turned to look at Yu Xiaoka, Lin Yi was shocked to find that Yu Xiaoka was gone. Yes, Yu Xiaoka was gone. In the empty tomb, only Lin Yi, Boss Bai, and Skybolt Pig were left. Lin Yi didn't need to use the light. He could feel everything in the tomb with his eyes closed, and Yu Xiaoka was nowhere to be seen. Yu Xiaoka, Lin Yi exclaimed, subconsciously turning his head towards the main chamber's entrance. The stone door was still closed, not open. A chill went from Lin Yi's feet to his head. Where did Yu Xiaoka go? Could this tomb be haunted? Why did Yu Xiaoka disappear into thin air? Boss Bai's scalp went numb as well. This is... Who's behind this? Lin Yi's sharp eyes scanned every corner of the tomb, but he didn't find anything out of place. Other than a giant coffin, there was nothing else. If someone was hiding here, Linny couldn't imagine where they would be hiding. But if no one was behind this, then where did Yushauka go? Could it be that the tomb robber who came to the tomb and took the Shinnon cauldron didn't leave, and was hiding in this tomb, waiting for an opportunity to attack Lin Yi and the others? Lin Yi broke out in cold sweat. There were only two possibilities. One was that the robber wasn't a human, and that was the only reason why Yushauka would disappear without a trace. The other possibility was that the robber was extremely strong, perhaps a sky-class late-phase peak. Only a master like that could do something like this under Lin Yi's nose. But even if it was a sky-class late-phase peak, there should be chi waves when they moved. Could it be a physical practitioner? The most important thing was that Lin Yi couldn't understand in this sealed tomb. Even if there was a sky class, how did Yushauka disappear? There had to be a place for her and a sky class to hide, right? Lin Yi's eyes moved around the tomb and finally landed on Zhang Liju's coffin. Master Zhang Liju, please forgive my disrespect, Lin Yi said to himself as he walked towards the coffin. This was the only place in the tomb that could hide someone. Otherwise, the walls, ceiling, and floor of the tomb wouldn't be able to hide anyone. Only this coffin was suspicious. You're saying that Yushauka went into this coffin? My boss could tell what Lin Yi was thinking, and asked with a weird expression, I don't know, but this is the only place I can think of. In the entire tomb, where else could someone hide? Lin Yi wasn't sure himself, but he could guess. That's right. You're right. Saving people is more important. My boss nodded to Lin Yi, indicating that he wasn't being disrespectful to the Grandmaster. After all, the dead weren't as important as the living. Even if the Grandmaster was in heaven, he wouldn't disagree. Lin Yi nodded and walked in front of the coffin, observing it attentively as he prepared to open the lid. Lin Yi raised his hand to lift the lid, but to his shock, the lid didn't move at all. Although Lin Yi didn't use his chi, it was just a coffin lie. How heavy could it be? Lin Yi didn't use his chi at all, but Lin Yi miscalculated this time. The lid didn't move at all. This time, Lin Yi channeled his chi, but the lid didn't move at all. Lin Yi was surprised and increased the strength of his chi, but the lid still didn't move. Something wasn't right. Lin Yi stopped using brute force and started inspecting the coffin. He wanted to see what was so special about the lid, and why it didn't open even after using so much strength. But after careful observation, he realized to his shock that the lid of the coffin wasn't made of wood. It couldn't be opened at all. In other words, the lid and the coffin were one, except that it was carved into the shape of a lid. Although there was a small gap between the lid and the coffin, if one looked closely, they would realize that the gap was carved on, and the lid and the coffin were clearly one. It would be a miracle if it could be opened. This coffin is dead? It can't be opened? My boss also noticed the strangeness. That's right. It can't be opened. It's fake. Lin Yi nodded and carefully knocked on the surface of the coffin twice, his face full of shock. This coffin is solid. It's just a big rock. There's no bones in it. What? My boss eyes wide. He didn't know what to say at this sudden turn of events. The two of them prayed for a long time in front of a solid sarcophagus without any bones. What was going on? That's Grandmaster Zhang's bones. I don't know. But there are only a few possibilities. Either this stone coffin was swapped, and the real one was taken away, or this isn't the real tomb of Grandmaster Zhang, but a fake tomb used to confuse people. Lin Yi said, Fake tomb? There are so many good things in there? My boss didn't understand and interrupted Lin Yi. Without so many good things, how can people believe this is a real tomb? How can it be fake? Lin Yi asked back. Chapter 2701. Zhang Liju didn't die? That's the last possibility I wanted to talk about. Lin Yi paused, a strange look on his face. Zhang Liju? He's not dead. What? My boss was quite shocked by Lin Yi's words as he looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. Not dead? How many years has it been? How is he not dead? Even a Sky-class late-phase peak would be dead by now, right? Sky-class late-phase peak theoretically had the ability to extend their lifespan indefinitely, but that was only in theory. It was limited by the amount of treasures and the amount of qi in the world. It was already quite impressive to be able to live up to 200 to 300 years, and living up to 400 to 500 years was a miracle. Regular practitioners without resources could only live up to 100 years. What if he's a heavenly Tao master? Lin Yi didn't believe in the existence of heavenly Tao masters before, thinking that it was just a legend, but after hearing the Fire Lion's words and seeing that thing, Lin Yi finally understood that heavenly Tao masters had existed before. Hiss. Bai Boss took in a cold breath. You're saying that Grand Master Zhang Liju isn't dead, and this tomb is fake to confuse people? I'm not sure if it is, and I don't know the specifics either. I'm just guessing, Lin Yi said. Bai Boss nodded slowly. Lin Yi's prediction was quite possible. With that thought, Bai Boss asked curiously, then if the person in the tomb is Grand Master Zhang Liju, why would he take Yu Xiaoke away to scare us? I don't know, but maybe he didn't take her away. Lin Yi shook his head. Grand Master Zhang Liju might not be here anymore. Or it wouldn't have been so smooth when we raided the tomb for the first time, and Skybolt Pig has been living on his own all these years. Huh. Lin Yi suddenly thought of Skybolt Pig and quickly gave him a kick. I say, little thing, is Zhang Liju dead or not? Gigi. The Skybolt Pig whimpered and pointed at the ground with its paw, indicating that the stone floor was too hard for it to write. Lin Yi was about to tell it not to write, and that it only needed to draw words on the ground. Suddenly, the sarcophagus in front of him disappeared. The sarcophagus disappeared into thin air. It disappeared in front of Lin Yi and Boss Bai. The place where the sarcophagus was originally placed was now flat ground. If Lin Yi wasn't brave enough, he would have pissed his pants. The coffin was gone. Moreover, it disappeared without a sound or warning. Although Lin Yi's eyes were on Skybolt Pig, he could see the coffin from the corner of his eyes. No one came to move the coffin, and the coffin simply disappeared into the ground. It was like the ginseng fruit from Journey to the West falling to the ground. It was gone. Boss Bai was already so old, and he used to be the head of the Five Elements sect. Even he felt a little breathless at this moment. If Lin Yi didn't cure his old disease, he might have died of a heart attack. This place is too weird. Boss Bai took a deep breath. But before we find Xiaoke, I can't leave. How about this, Master Bai? Let Skybolt Pig take you away first. Lin Yi suggested. After all, Boss Bai was here with him, and he didn't have much of a relationship with Xiaoke. There was no need for him to wait here, so Lin Yi asked him to leave first. How can I do that? Boss Bai shook his head. I'm your teacher. How can I leave you here? It's fine. I'll stay here. Okay. Lin Yi didn't insist and started to carefully examine the ground where the coffin was placed. After calming down, Lin Yi thought of some important questions. Most importantly, even if a Sky-class master came here and captured Xiaoke, why didn't Lin Yi's Jade warn him? Xiaoke was one of the members of Lin Yi's exploration team. If anyone in the team was in danger, the Jade would warn him in advance. Now that Xiaoke disappeared and the Jade didn't warn him, did it mean that Xiaoke wasn't in danger? Or could it be that Yu Xiaoke wasn't captured, but left on her own? This was the only explanation that made sense. Otherwise, why didn't the Jade react at all? After calming down, Lin Yi started to observe carefully. The ground here was no different from the surrounding ground. But the more it was like this, the more strange Lin Yi felt. If there was a coffin here, then the dust on the ground here should be much less than the other places. There should have been the outline of a sarcophagus here, but there wasn't one here, which meant that there was often dust here, which was why it was like this. In other words, it seemed like there was no coffin here at all. This stone room was more like an empty tomb. However, just as Lin Yi was looking, a coffin suddenly appeared again. It appeared in front of Lin Yi and Boss Bai just like that, and on top of the coffin stood a person. It was the missing Xiaoke. Even if Lin Yi had a strong endurance, he was still shocked. However, Xiaoke was finally back, which made Lin Yi sigh in relief. Xiaoke, you're finally back. Just now you, male thief. I found a mechanism, a big secret about the tomb. Xiaoke's face was full of excitement. The tomb we're in is only the first floor. There are more buildings below. What? You mean, you went to the next floor? Lin Yi was shocked, his eyes wide open as he looked at Xiaoke in disbelief. What Linny didn't expect was that there was another world below the tomb. Not to mention that Linny could find this secret. He didn't even think about it before, but Xiaoka did. Yes, this coffin isn't actually a coffin, it's an elevator. Through this elevator, you can go to the floor below. Xiaoka said, "Of course, I'm just making an analogy. This thing shouldn't be powered by electricity. So, this thing is a mechanism similar to the elevator, right?" Boss Bai was also very surprised and looked at Xiaoka with admiration. "How did you find it?" Chapter 2702. A different world, and then, you found out about this secret? Linny was very impressed as well. It seemed like bringing Xiaoka back to the tomb was a wise choice. If he came alone, he wouldn't have studied the coffin, and he wouldn't have been able to discover the secret of this staircase. Especially the Strange Tales Chronicle, Lin Yi and Boss Bai were about to leave, but Xiaoka found out that something was amiss. It seemed that Xiaoka was indeed a professional. No wonder old Hay would pay such a high price to hire a trap master like her to go with him. "Yeah, I thought we could open some secret passageway, but I found a staircase. There's a whole different world down there, with a lot of things for women," Xiaoka said. "Oh, let's go down and take a look then?" Linny was very curious about the space down there, but he was worried that Boss Bai wouldn't want to explore it. "Alright, let's go take a look then." Boss Bai was curious as well. He was suspicious about this solid coffin. What if it was as Linny guessed, that Zhang Liju wasn't dead? Could it be down there? If he could see Zhang Liju with his own eyes, Boss Bai would be very excited. "Then we'll all stand on top of the coffin. I'll activate the mechanism." And so, Lin Yi, Boss Bai, and Xiaoka, as well as Skybolt Pig, stood on top of the coffin. Xiaoka then pressed on the wall, and the coffin started to descend quickly, but the speed was very stable, and there was no impact at all. It was so quiet that people couldn't even feel that the coffin was moving. Lin Yi couldn't help but be amazed by this situation. The design of this tomb was truly amazing. Lin Yi took a closer look, and when Xiaoka pressed the mechanism, there weren't any bumps or bumps. It didn't look like anything was wrong. He didn't know how Xiaoka found out about it. The coffin stopped very quickly, and Lin Yi and the others got off. They were now in an empty stone room, but one look was enough to tell that this stone room was different from the previous one. There were no carvings of Zhang Liju on the walls. Linny frowned as he watched the Skybolt Pig jump down from the coffin. This fella doesn't seem to be surprised at all. Could it be? "Skybolt Pig, did you already know that there was an underground space here?" Linny lowered his head and asked Skybolt Pig. "Gigi." The Skybolt Pig was a little helpless, but he still nodded to show that he understood. "Then why didn't you say so earlier?" Linny glared at Skybolt Pig angrily. Wasn't this asking him to do it twice? If he had known, he would have gone to the tomb the first time he came. Why wait until now? "Gigi." Skybolt Pig used his two front paws to gesture something as if he was defending himself. "Write it on the ground with your paws." Linny didn't understand what it was trying to say. It was too complicated, and Linny couldn't guess what it was trying to say. Master said to let nature take its course. That was what Skybolt Pig wrote on the ground. Let nature take its course. Linny sighed and understood what Zhang Liju meant. It seemed like Zhang Liju wanted to let fate take its course. Being able to open the tomb and accept his legacy was a form of fate. Everything else was better to let nature take its course. There was no need to force anything. Skybolt Pig followed his master's wishes and didn't tell Linny that there was another level below the tomb. It was reasonable, and Linny had no reason to blame him. "Forget it, let's go for a walk." "Xiaoka, there's no danger here, right?" Linny looked at Xiaoka and asked. "No." Xiaoka shook her head. "But I didn't go far. I just walked around for a bit before going back." "Huh? That coffin disappeared again. Is it okay?" White Boss suddenly pointed at the corner of the wall where the coffin used to be. "The coffin went back up by itself. It's fine." Xiaoka shook her head. "There's a mechanism here. The coffin can come down and pick us up anytime." "Oh." White Boss nodded. It made sense. Otherwise, how would Xiaoka go back up? The three left the stone room together. Linny insisted on walking in front. His jade had an alarm function, and he would be able to react immediately if there was any danger. Piglet, you stay with me. If there's danger, you can take care of it in advance. You don't want me to die, do you? Lin E kicked Skybolt Pig. I'm telling you, I'm an Earth class mid-phase peak now. It's only a matter of time before I reach Sky class. When that time comes, I'll be able to raise you to Earth class late phase peak. If you don't want that strength, then pretend I didn't say anything. Oink oink. Skybolt Pig heard Lin Yi's words and started drooling. He nodded, saying that he'll take care of it. Lin Yi was satisfied with Skybolt Pig's attitude, and so the man and pig went to the front to explore the way. Xiaoka and White Boss followed behind, and the three of them left the stone room together. After exiting the stone room, a huge hall came into view. It was very spacious. Although it was called a hall, it was more like a training field. There was a place to rest at the side of the hall. Around the hall, other than the stone room that they came out from, there were 3 other rooms. Is this all? Lin Yi looked at the spacious hall and said in shock. The situation here was out of Lin Yi's expectations. It was completely different from the first floor. This was more like an enlarged version of a house with 4 rooms and a living room. Yes, this is all, Xiaoka nodded. I went to the nearest room, and I think it's a woman's room. Oh, a woman's room? Lin Yi was shocked. No way. Zhang Liju was quite a playboy, living with a beauty in an ancient tomb? Ahem. White Boss blushed as well. He felt that it wasn't a good idea to talk bad about his grandmaster behind his back. Skybolt Pig, what's going on? Lin Yi turned to Skybolt Pig. Who's this woman? Zhang Liju said to let nature take its course, but Lin Yi had already noticed the problem, and Skybolt Pig, in order to level up, couldn't care less. He started to tell the story of this place. Chapter 2703. They all live here, so there are women's things here. The tomb above is just to confuse people, and this is where Zhang Liju, Ice Fairy, and Snow Fairy really live, Skybolt Pig continued. Oh, the sect master of Ice Palace? And the sect master of Snow Valley? Lin Yi's eyes went wide. He didn't know who the sect master of Snow Valley was, but the sect master of Ice Palace? Wasn't that Miss Crystal Candy's master? Yes, they were also the founders of Ice Palace and Snow Valley, and because one of them had the surname Bing and the other Shui, they were called Ice Fairy and Snow Fairy. From then on, everyone who inherited the position of Ice Palace and Snow Valley's headmaster, no matter what their previous name was, would have this surname, Skybolt Pig explained. This Zhang Liju. He's really something. Lin Yi couldn't help but be impressed. Skybolt Pig, are they really dead? Since there's a place to live here, and there's a teleportation staircase, does that mean that they've been living here for a while? The master and the 2 mistresses were all Sky Class late phase peak, and had reached the limit of their lifespan. Even Zhang Liju couldn't sustain the 3 of them with all the treasures he had, and so the 3 of them made a deal to build an ancient tomb, and with the thought of success or death, they came here to do their closed-door training, looking for a way to break through Sky Class late phase peak and step into Heavenly Dao. If they succeeded, then they would become Heavenly Dao Masters, and they could pursue that legendary immortality, but if they didn't, then the 3 of them would sleep together in this tomb, and this would be their eternal home, Skybolt Pig explained. Then, is Zhang Liju dead or not? Lin Yi asked. Shouldn't be dead, Skybolt Pig wrote after some hesitation. Shouldn't be dead? What do you mean by shouldn't be dead? Lin Yi asked curiously. If he's dead, then he's dead, and if he's not dead, then he's not dead. One day, they disappeared together, and I'm guessing that they succeeded. After becoming Heavenly Dao Masters, they would go to a place called Sky Class Island. Master has many friends and connections. There should be a way to get there. Skybolt Pig wrote. I see. Lin Yi nodded. If that was the case, then Zhang Liju was most likely still alive, and so were his 2 girlfriends. But Lin Yi was curious. Then didn't you come back here to take a look? I can't. Writing until here, the Skybolt Pig pointed at the stone door in the farthest room and said, that stone door can only be opened by a heaven rank expert. I can't open it. They disappeared from that room. Oh. Lin Yi was a little surprised. He didn't think that there would be such a mechanism in the ancient tomb. He wanted to go and take a look. Should we go to that door first? Thunder Pig nodded and led the way. Xiaoka was confused. As long as there was no danger here, there was no danger. However, looking at Skybolt Pig's actions, there was no danger at all. Skybolt Pig deftly opened the mechanism of the stone door, and the stone door opened. This was a weapons display room. On the wall of this room, there was a huge rack. Inside the rack, there were 3 types of weapons. Yes, there were only 3 weapons, no more, no less. Other than that, there was nothing else in the room. But it was normal. Be it Zhongliju, Ice Fairy, or Snow Fairy, they were all Sky-class late-phase peak masters, and other than their love for each other, they were all focused on the pursuit of martial arts. Other than weapons, they wouldn't study anything else. The tomb above was really just an ancient tomb, and Zhang Liju should have been focusing on his research on the Sky Path Golden Elixir. He didn't do any research on other elixirs, so the things above weren't of much use. Here, there's a big box with a lot of gold and silver hairpins and jewelry. Can I take them? Xiaoka looked at Lin Yi hesitantly. Lin Yi didn't know if he should take these things. It was fine if he took the Sky-class weapon, but these were Zhang Liju's personal jewelry. It wouldn't be right if he took it, right? Boss Bai, on the other hand, had heard about Xiaoka from Lin Yi before. He respected this girl very much, so he nodded. E and I are both from 5 Elements sect, and Zhang Liju's and the 2 grandmothers' belongings are also 5 Elements sect's belongings. You can take anything you want. Since Ancestral Master and Ancestral Mother left and didn't take these things with them, it means that these things aren't very important and shouldn't be very useful to them. That's true. Lin Yi looked at Skybolt Pig again and realized that this little guy didn't seem to mind at all. It seemed like these things really weren't important. But thinking about it, it made sense. Li Ju, Ice Fairy, and Snow Fairy all went to pursue Heavenly Tao, and these things weren't really necessary. Then take it. Okay. Xiaoka happily opened her bag and put all the jewelry inside. These things could be sold for a good price. After Xiaoka was done, Lin Yi said, Master Bai, let's go. It's time to leave. Okay. Boss Bai nodded. I'm very happy to know that Zhang Liju might still be alive. If he could come back to 5 Elements sect, I believe Xinshin and the others would restrain themselves. Haha, if he was willing to come back, he would have come back a long time ago. He wouldn't have waited until now. Lin Yi didn't have much hope. That's true. Let's go. Boss Bai said, and the group went to the stone room that they came from. Xiaoka pressed on the wall again, and not long after, the coffin appeared in the room. No one was surprised by this, and they stood on top of the coffin. Xiaoka didn't need to press the mechanism, and after a while, the coffin moved on its own, returning to the main chamber on the upper floor. Now, they were sure that there wasn't any danger here. The people who came here before had probably left long ago. All their worries were just for scaring themselves. Just as he was about to leave the tomb, Lin Yi started to covet the bead that tested for constitution. It was a good thing, after all, and he wouldn't be happy if it was stolen as well. Should we take that bead as well? Boss Bai didn't want to take it at first, but then he thought that someone might come in and steal it. He hesitated and said, if you need it, we can take it too? Then let's take it too. Lin Yi nodded. After all, he wanted to test other people's attributes. For example, Ming Yao and Yushu. Lin Yi had promised to help them find a suitable practitioner's arts, but he didn't know their attributes. Chapter 2705. After all, most of the attributes were hidden, and without special methods, one wouldn't be able to see them. One major attribute could be split into many smaller attributes, like Bingtong's Ice Heart, Xiaoxiao's Yin Cold, Aniqing's Ice, and so on. These were all under the water attribute. These attributes, on the other hand, couldn't be tested on the bead at all. Only the major attributes could be tested, and so there might be situations where the practitioner's arts didn't match well. But with this bead, one could at least know the direction of training. Of the 5 elements, only the water attribute was complicated. The others were fine. Lin Yi took the bead and left the tomb with Boss Bai and Xiaoke. The process was quite smooth, and they didn't meet any danger or obstacles. The three entered the tomb at daybreak, and now that they came out, the sky was already filled with stars. This time, the three returned with great rewards. Xiaoke got a bunch of jewelry, and Lin Yi got the answer to his constitution, 3 sky-class weapons, and a bead for testing constitution. Boss Bai, on the other hand, got an exciting new Master Zhang Liju might not be dead. After sending Xiaoke back to the orphanage, Lin Yi and Boss Bai returned to Donghai. Xiaoke didn't want to leave, but with Boss Bai there, she didn't keep the male thief for long. She just held his hand reluctantly and let him leave. Looking at the disappearing car, Xiaoke sighed. Was this love? If only the male thief was Lin Yi. There wouldn't be so many things to worry about, but he wasn't. She didn't know how to deal with Lin Yi, who was getting more and more insatiable. But, thinking about the jewelry in her bag, Xiaoke felt happy again. These were all antiques, and even if they weren't priceless, they were still priceless. This trip wasn't a waste. On the way back, Boss Bai was still immersed in the exciting news that Zhang Liju might not be dead. What do you think? Should we look for Grandmaster Zhang's whereabouts? If we could find him, 5 Elements sect would have searched for him a long time ago. Zhang Liju is a heavenly Dao master. We won't be able to find him easily. Linny was calm. He didn't expect to find Zhang Liju. If Zhang Liju wanted to appear, he would appear. If he didn't want to appear, then so be it. No matter how you look, it's useless. Skybolt Pig had been in the tomb for 1,000 years, and he had never seen Zhang Liju. This meant that Zhang Liju had no intention of coming back. Otherwise, even if he didn't come back to the tomb, he would have gone back to 5 Elements sect a long time ago. That's true. Boss Bai nodded. I was too impatient. Oh right, Teacher Bai. Why don't you tell me the story between Zhang Liju and that ice and snow fairy? You're from the 5 Elements sect, so you should know this story very well, right? Linny asked. He was very curious about Zhang Liju's love story. Of course, Xiao Xiao was part of the reason. Lin Yi blinked. That's right. As the name suggests, heartless arts means that the person who practices it will abandon all emotions, no longer having love. Boss Bai said. They'll be like an ice mountain, hard for people to get close to. Don't worry about that. We are not people who don't know what to do. Kang Xiaobo naturally didn't come here to think of a way to make Tang Yun go back. He only came to visit Tang Yun. Even Ming Yao and Yu Shu didn't want Tang Yun to come back. Otherwise, they wouldn't have hidden it from Lin Yi. This matter had to be concealed. Otherwise, to Lin Yi, it would be harming Lin Yi. His current strength was not enough to fight against Xuegu. Tang Yun's cultivation was getting harder and harder. She wanted to cultivate quietly, but she couldn't forget Lin Yi. In her heart, she didn't want to forget about Lin Yi. She wanted to remember Lin Yi forever. Remember that afternoon under the tree. Remember the stars in the night sky of West Star Mountain. These were the most beautiful and precious memories of her life. Even if she couldn't see Lin Yi again, she wanted to remember these sweetness, the sweetness that belonged only to her, because there was another person who would forget them forever. The Grand Elder also tried to persuade Tang Yun to take the senseless grass, but Tang Yun refused. This was also the reason why the Grand Elder asked Kang Xiaobo and the others to persuade Tang Yun. At this moment, Tang Yun was resting. A female disciple who served Tang Yun knocked on the door. Elder Tang, the Grand Elder said that a few of your old friends are here to visit. Oh, my old friends? Tang Yun paused. Could it be Ming Yao and Yushu? Thinking of this possibility, Tang Yun got excited. If they came, would Linny come? Yes, a man and 2 women are waiting in the guest room. The Grand Elder wants you to go over, the female disciple said. Ah, okay, I'll go now. Tang Yun said excitedly. A man and 2 women, it must be Lin Yi, Ming Yao, and Yushu. Tang Yun quickly left the room and rushed to the guest room without waiting for the female disciple. This surprised the female disciple. In the Snow Valley, Tang Yun only did cultivation every day. She was a quiet person and didn't like to talk. Why was she so excited today? The beauty's personal expert 2717, however, this was Tang Yun's business. As a female disciple, she couldn't ask. She could only follow behind quietly. Tang Yun quickly arrived at the guest room. The Grand Elder and Elder Zhang were already waiting at the door. Seeing Tang Yun, the Grand Elder said faintly, "Elder Tang, your old friends are inside. I won't disturb you anymore." The beauty's personal expert was first published on www.guli.cc. Mobile users can visit wap.guli.cc. With that, she left the guest room with Elder Zhang. This surprised Tang Yun. Linny was here. Would she let her meet with Linny alone? When Tang Yun entered the guest room with doubt, her doubt was instantly solved. It wasn't Lin Yi, but Kong Xiaobo, Xiaofan, and Lu Xinwen. Tang Yun instantly understood. No wonder the Grand Elder was so relaxed. If Linny was here, would she let her meet him? Tang Yun couldn't help but slap her forehead at the thought, smiling bitterly. She was too worried about Linny. Plus, Linny had Mingyao and Yu Shu to help him out. Why would he think of her? Kong Xiaobo, Xiaofan, Xinwen. So it's you guys. However, Tang Yun was also very surprised to see them. She had been bored for a while. She didn't want to talk to anyone except for her adoptive parents and birth mother. She didn't have any common topics. Other than asking about Shueli's cultivation, there was nothing else to talk about. Yun, are you okay? Xiaofan was also excited when she saw Tang Yun. She ran over and held Tang Yun's hands with Lu Xinwen. Chapter 2708. First, Xiaofan and Xinwen miss you. So they wanted to see you. Xiaobo explained. Secondly, Mingyao and Yushu wanted us to come see you. They couldn't get in touch with you guys, so they wanted us to ask how you're doing. They're a little worried. Tang Yun's eyes flashed with a hint of melancholy. I miss you guys too. I miss Yao Yao and Shu. I miss Lin Yi even more, but I know that Linny and I are destined not to be together in this life. How is he? Is he okay? Tang Yun couldn't wait to hear about Lin Yi. Boss, he's fine. Kong Xiaobo didn't know what to say. What's his strength now? Right, I heard that the hidden House Yu, and House Xiao sent out a few masters to look for Lin Yi, but they didn't find Lin Yi, right? Has this matter been resolved? Tang Yun was very worried about Lin Yi's safety. When she first came to the Ice Palace, she could still contact Mingyao occasionally, but the Grand Elder cut off her contact with the outside world, so she didn't know what was going on. Chapter 2718. School Beauty's personal expert. Although she knew that Linny was fine, she still felt uneasy. Hidden House Yu? Hidden House Xiao? Hidden House Yu? Kong Xiaobo smiled and shook his head. Boss is very strong now. He doesn't care about these families anymore. Now, the Hidden House Han, House Pai, and House Shuang have all become his lackeys, and he can kill Sky-class early-phase masters in one hit. What? Lin Yi can kill Sky-class early-phase masters in one hit? What's his strength now? He's already above the middle stage of Heaven stage? Tang Yun's eyes flashed with disbelief, but also with excitement. No, Boss is only an Earth-class mid-phase peak, but he's very strong. He can kill Sky-class early-phase masters in one hit. As Kong Xiaobo spoke, he told Tang Yun everything Linny had been up to recently. Tang Yun, on the other hand, was listening with great interest. She would ask a few small questions from time to time. She heard that Lin Yi was already so strong. It seemed that as long as Lin Yi didn't provoke the ancient sects, then the hidden power wouldn't be able to bring any harm to Lin Yi. Although the Great Elder had left, she was still a peak late-stage Heaven-class master. She could hear the conversation in the room from afar. When she heard that Lin Yi was actually able to instantly kill a Heaven-class early-stage master with his Earth-class mid-stage peak strength, they were also very shocked. Wasn't Lin Yi's growth a little too fast? The Great Elder actually didn't pay much attention to Lin Yi, so she didn't know what happened during this period of time. Now that she heard Kong Xiaobo's words, she realized that Lin Yi was actually so strong. But the Grand Elder wasn't worried at all. After all, Lin Yi's level was too far below hers. She could easily kill a Sky-class early-phase master, and Lin Yi was only an Earth-class mid-phase. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't do anything. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't surpass the barrier brought by the level of strength. If that's the case, I can rest assured. Tang Yun heard Kang Xiaobo's words and nodded in relief. She nodded, gratified. Linny was so strong that she didn't have to worry anymore. Right, Xiao Xiao told me to get Linny a big wife. Who's his big wife now? Is it Yao Yao? That? Kang Xiaobo was also worried about how to persuade Tang Yun. Tang Yun asked this question, so Kang Xiaobo followed up, no, Linny's big wife is Wang Xinyan. Wang Xinyan? Tang Yun was stunned. She had never heard of this name before. Where did this person come from? Yes, she is called Wang Xinyan. She is Boss's university classmate and deskmate. It was confirmed through Yao Yao and the others. Currently, she is also living in Boss's villa. I heard that she is sharing a room with Boss. Kang Xiaobo said truthfully. He didn't want to agitate Tang Yun, but he remembered the great elder's orders and had no choice. Ah, they are already living together. Tang Yun heard this news and a desolate expression flashed across her face. Did he have someone else he liked? After all, she wasn't his first woman. However, Tang Yun felt relieved after that. It was fortunate that she wasn't. Otherwise, how would she be able to save Lin Yi? If something had happened between her and Lin Yi, would she still be able to stay here and train? Would the Shuegu use this as a condition to save Lin Yi? Obviously not. Although Tang Yun didn't know who Wang Xinyan was, she didn't know how Lin Yi met Wang Xinyan. How did he get to know Xinyan? He was someone that Meng Yao and Yushu both approved of, so there had to be no problem with his character. This was Xiao Xiao's idea, right? I think she told you to? Seeing that Tang Yun was struggling, Kang Xiaobo quickly tried to persuade her. Yes, I know. It's fine. Lin Yi and I are not fated to be together. We won't be able to see each other again. As long as he is happy, it's fine. Tang Yun smiled and said, Yun, it's good that you understand this. Since you've chosen this place, then train hard. Xinwen also tried to persuade her. I understand. Don't worry, I'm not an impulsive and irrational person. I'm no longer the little girl that didn't know anything. Haha. Tang Yun thought back to the time when she was afraid that Lin Yi wouldn't want her and threw her phone on the ground. She felt that she was really naive back then. Chapter 27:18. School Beauty's personal expert, the Grand Elder, heard the conversation from afar, satisfied with Xiaobo and Xinwen's reply. Tang Yun's reply made her sigh in relief. It seemed like Tang Yun could stay here and train in peace from now on. She wouldn't have to worry about accidents anymore. Yun, why do I feel that your body is very cold? Is this the consequence of practicing heartless arts? At this moment, Xiaofan was no longer as happy as when they first met. After calming down, she realized that although Tang Yun was very warm towards them, there was an unnatural coldness emitting from her body. It made people not want to get close to her, as if she was a big block of ice. School Beauty's personal expert, first published on www.Guli.cc. Mobile users visit WAP. Guli.cc. Yeah, Xiaofan, you noticed? Tang Yun smiled helplessly. This is what heartless arts is like. So, when I practice it to the extreme, even if Linny wants to be with me, he won't want to be with me anymore. There's an unnatural aura around me that makes people not want to get close to me. Chapter 2709. No wonder Lin Yi dared to say that as long as he had one breath left, he could be healed. It seemed like he wasn't bluffing. Zhu Laoer felt that even if he had one breath left, Lin Yi could still save him. At this moment, he finally understood why Lin Yi, Wu Chintian, and Chen Yutian broke through miraculously when they were about to be crippled. It was because of this. No wonder when Lin Yi was injured, he was fine. Lin Yi could heal himself. Zhu Laoer's mouth twitched as he recalled how Lin Yi pretended to be a pig to eat the tiger after he was injured to lure the enemies to his doorstep. This was clearly a trap. Lin Yi had probably healed long ago and was sitting at home pretending to be sick, waiting for the enemies to come looking for trouble. However, he misunderstood Lin Yi. Before Lin Yi discovered General Wei Wu's secret, He really did plan to run away with his whole family. I'm fine. I'm completely healed. Big brother, my meridians are healed, and they're even thicker than before. It's more beneficial for cultivation. Zhu Lao looked at Zhu Lao's elder brother excitedly. Healed? That's great. That's great. Zhu Lao's elder brother let out a long breath. The Zhu brothers' parents passed away early, and the two brothers depended on each other. Although Zhu Lao didn't die, he couldn't cultivate anymore, and his lifespan would definitely decrease. Zhu Lao was older than him, but he had to watch his younger brother pass away first. He felt bad thinking about it, but now it was great. He didn't expect his decision to bring his younger brother such a great opportunity. Don't talk nonsense. Now use your own arts. I'm going to increase your strength. Linny said faintly. Yes, boss. Zhu Lao didn't doubt it anymore. He was ready to follow Linny wholeheartedly. With a boss like this protecting him, he wouldn't be afraid of anything in the future. He was like a cockroach that wouldn't die. When he was about to die, he would teleport back to the city and find Lin Yi to revive himself. Who could be more powerful than him? Zhu Lao's elder brother could feel his brother's happiness, but he didn't believe that Lin Yi wanted to increase his brother's strength. He didn't doubt that Lin Yi could heal him since there was Pai Zhihai's example. He was happy but not surprised, but increasing his strength was different. Lin, boss, aren't you going to test us? Zhu Lao's elder brother hesitated. It was too good to be true. Don't doubt the people you use. Don't use the people you suspect. If you two are going to go against me, then I can easily take your lives, Linny smiled. Although his tone was calm, it made the Zhu brothers shiver in fear. Yes, Lin Yi could even kill a Sky Class Master in one hit. Wouldn't it be a piece of cake for him to kill the two brothers? With that thought, they were relieved. Lin Yi wasn't afraid of them betraying him at all. If they betrayed him, he would just kill them. Don't worry, boss. I, Zhu Lao, swear that we two brothers will follow your lead from now on. Zhu Lao quickly said. Haha, I'll see the result, Linny said indifferently. However, the more indifferent Linny was, the more the Zhu brothers respected him. If it was Zhao Qibing, he would be happy to put on a fake act and say some touching words before promising some benefits. As he spoke, Zhu Lao channeled his practitioner's arts and was shocked to find that his strength was increasing rapidly. Pure qi flowed into his body from his meridians and circulated in his body as he channeled his practitioner's arts, turning it into his own. Elder Zhu was shocked. Before this, he had never heard of anyone increasing strength like this. Wasn't this a human cauldron? But it was different from a human cauldron. A human cauldron usually sacrificed their own strength to help others, but Lin Yi wasn't stupid enough to give his strength to him. The only possibility was that Lin Yi wouldn't lose his strength, but he could increase the strength of others. How terrifying was that? Zhu Lao had just recovered from his injuries and didn't have much qi in his body. But with Lin Yi helping him level up, he became a golden class master in the blink of an eye. He was only one step away from mystic class. Fast, it was simply too fast. Zhu Lao was channeling his practitioner's arts so Elder Zhu could see his strength. Elder Zhu's eyes widened as he looked at Zhu Lao's sudden increase in strength. He felt gratified and a bit envious at the same time. But Linny had said that he was an Earth class master, and he couldn't increase the strength of an Earth class master. So Elder Zhu could only pray that Linny would step into Sky class as soon as possible and increase his strength. In one morning, Zhu Lao went from a useless person to a mystic late phase peak. Lin Yi gave him a small qi gathering pill, and under Elder Zhu and Lin Yi's protection, he swallowed it and became an Earth class master. Boss, Zhu Lao was so excited that he couldn't speak. Elder Zhu told him that Lin Yi could not only heal but also increase his strength, but he was still skeptical. Only after experiencing it would he know how magical it was. He didn't even know how to thank Lin Yi. All right, you've been out for a long time. Take these 2 potions back with you. As for this pill, take it in advance. Lin Yi handed a pill and 2 packets of sealed medicine to Boss Zhu. This was what he just concocted. Okay, thank you, boss. Elder Zhu took the things from Lin Yi and said excitedly, the rest is up to you guys. But if you follow Shu's instructions, there shouldn't be a problem, Lin Yi said. Normal people wouldn't be able to recognize the potions I make, not even Zhao Yaowang. Of course we trust you. The two brothers trusted Lin Yi without any reservations. Lin Yi drove to school, while the Zhu brothers went back to the hidden house. The Zhu brothers had been in high spirits a moment ago, but now they were back to their old self. His disguise was quite good, and if they didn't check his meridians, no one would be able to tell that his injuries had healed and his strength had increased. Of course, Yaowang wouldn't check his meridians if he had nothing better to do. Elder Zhu and Zhu Lao quietly returned to the hidden Zhao house, while Elder Zhu rushed to see the old head of House Zhao. The disciples of the Snow Valley now all knew that there was a person in the Snow Valley who was even more powerful than the Grand Elder. If they encountered him, they must not provoke him, or else they would die very, very miserably. Xiaobo, Xiaofan, Xinwen, you're here. Tang Yun's mother was happy to see them. Why isn't Linny here? Boss, Auntie, you know that boss drank the senseless grass. It's Tang Yun's idea. We can't do it on our own. Kong Xiaobo said awkwardly. Oh, I know, but when he's strong enough, he can come and take us away, or he can take over the Snow Valley. Oh right, I also have a daughter who can marry him. When the time comes, the Ice Palace and Snow Valley will all be his, and this matter will be resolved. Mrs. Tang said. Now, only Tang Yun's mother dared to say such outrageous things. The disciples of Snow Valley didn't dare to refute her. Everyone was used to it. Even the Grand Elder didn't dare to mess with her. Who were these disciples? That's true. Kong Xiaobo wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and nodded. Tang Yun's mother was amazing. She had another daughter who was going to marry Lin Yi? Right? Oh right, I've gotten a lot of treasures. Bring them back for Lin Yi. Let him eat them and increase his strength. I'll give him something good. Tang Yun's mother said. You guys can walk around too. If you see something good, bring it back. Don't be shy. Kong Xiaobo was speechless. Tang Yun's mother was so amazing. Although Kong Xiaobo knew that Tang Yun's mother was like this, he didn't like it. But today, he realized that it was a good thing. Let's go. I'll bring you around. Tang Yun's mother said. She brought Kong Xiaobo, Xiaofan, and Lu Xinwen out of the guest room to tour Snow Valley. This was the first time the three of them entered Snow Valley. They couldn't help but admire the scenery. It was really beautiful. It was much more beautiful than those ski resorts. It was a natural scenery. There were many disciples busy in the valley, but when they saw Tang Yun's mother, they avoided her. You, bring us some fruits and delicious food. Tang Yun's mother pointed at a patrolling disciple. Yes, Mrs. Tang. The patrolling disciple quickly nodded and left. He then came back with a fruit platter and a few cups of freshly squeezed juice. Kong Xiaobo and the others were dumbfounded. Tang Yun's mother took the fruit platter and passed it to them. Eat it. The fruits here are all natural and pollution-free. It's very delicious. Bring back a few boxes when you leave. We can have as many as you want. If it's not enough, we can pick it now. Okay, Kong Xiaobo said weakly. He took 2 fruits and passed them to Xiaofan and Lu Xinwen. He also took one for himself. The fruits here were really delicious. Kong Xiaobo ate one and didn't want to put it down again. After eating the fruits, Tang Yun's mother brought Kong Xiaobo, Xiaofan, and Lu Xinwen to the herb garden. Tang Yun's mother was here for her weekly plundering. Today was the day, so Tang Yun's mother brought the 3 of them here. Coincidentally, a few disciples of the Snow Valley were walking towards them. They were pushing a small cart, which was filled with fresh medicinal herbs that had just been picked from the Snow Valley's herb garden. You, stop right there. Tang Yun's mother put her hands on her waist and blocked the disciples. Madam Tang. The Snow Valley disciples hurriedly asked in fear and trepidation, What's the matter? Chapter 27:11. This, Mrs. Tang, you used to come early in the morning, but you didn't come today. We can't just wait for you here and not work, right? The disciple wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said with a smile, Oh, Now that you mention it, from now on, you're not allowed to work if I'm not here. I'll tell my daughters to kill anyone who dares to sneak around. Mrs. Tang humphed. Yes. The disciple smiled bitterly and nodded, not daring to refute. Even the Grand Elder didn't want to go against Mrs. Tang. So what were they to him? Let me take a look. What are these? Mrs. Tang asked as she pointed at the treasures in the cart. Mrs. Tang, there are 2 ripe ice spirit holy fruits, 2 ripe heavenly barrier-breaking fruits, and 5 ripe 500-year-old lingji. The disciple didn't dare to hide anything and reported to Mrs. Tang in one breath. Ice spirit fruit? Isn't that what you use to heal Lin Yi's wounds? This is good. I'll take it. Give me both of them. Mrs. Tang said arrogantly. Mrs. Tang, there's only one of them. It's for another ancient sect, and it's already been reserved. If you take both of them, it'll be hard for us to explain ourselves. How about you just take one? The disciple said with a sad face. Are you trying to bargain with me? I don't think you know how good I am. Mrs. Tang glared at him. Let me tell you, I came to this broken snow valley to plunder things. Do you think I wanted to come here? I'm selling barbecue, and I'm making money. The disciple was speechless, but he didn't dare to refute. Mrs. Tang, how about I give you another ripe ice spirit fruit next time? Take a look at this Tianyuan barrier-breaking fruit. This is also a good thing. It's useful for powerhouses below the heaven rank. As long as you're not at the peak of the late earth rank, as long as you reach the great perfection of every minor rank, you'll be able to smoothly break through the barrier after eating the sky-breaking fruit. There are no side effects, no poison, and no pain. Oh, all right, since you're so sincere, leave these 2 barrier-breaking fruits to me. You can take one of the ice spirit fruits and the rest of the items too. Give me a little of everything. Mrs. Tang waved her hand and said, This, can you take one? 2 is too much. This is as precious as the ice spirit holy fruit. The disciple said with a bitter face, Forget it. So be it. I won't make things difficult for you. Although Mother Tang was tyrannical and liked to take advantage of others, she also knew when to stop. Although her 2 daughters were very powerful and allowed her to do as she pleased in Snow Valley, she also knew that when things reached an extreme, they would go in the opposite direction. Therefore, every time she plundered something, she would stop at a level that Snow Valley could bear. Yes? The disciple nodded and gave Mrs. Tang some of the good stuff in the carriage, including an ice spirit holy fruit, a sky origin barrier-breaking fruit, and a few other natural treasures. Kong Xiaobo, Xiaofan, and Xinwen were all stunned. If they didn't know that there was a Grand Elder, they would have thought that Mrs. Tang was the Grand Elder instead. She was the one in charge of the Snow Valley. Xiaobo, when you guys go back, bring these to Lin Yi. I still have some natural treasures in my room. Bring them back for him as well. Mrs. Tang said. This, aren't we going to leave some for Tang Yun? Kong Xiaobo asked. No need. Whatever she needs, she can just ask the Grand Elder for it. Mrs. Tang said. Is that so? All right. Kong Xiaobo was shocked by Mrs. Tang. This Snow Valley was no different from his own home. As the group toured the Snow Valley, Tang Yun was sitting cross-legged in her room, but she couldn't calm herself down to train. Although she agreed to find a wife for Lin Yi, she still felt uncomfortable when she heard that Lin Yi had found a wife. Especially when the wife wasn't Ming Yao. If it was Ming Yao, Tang Yun wouldn't have any special feelings. After all, she had seen through Ming Yao and Yushu's intentions before she left. This was also the reason why Tang Yun entrusted Lin Yi to Ming Yao and Yushu. But now, it was a different person. It was someone called Wang Xinyan. Tang Yun didn't have much of an impression of this person. Although the name sounded familiar, she didn't remember meeting her before. She didn't know what kind of person she was. Whatever, as long as Lin Yi liked her, it was fine. Yao Yao and Yushu were the ones who helped her check. She shouldn't be the type of girl with a bad character. Tang Yun, how is it? Have you given up now? The Grand Elder's voice suddenly sounded out, giving Tang Yun a big fright. Tang Yun was thinking about Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan. She didn't even know when the Grand Elder entered the room. She quickly adjusted her emotions and raised her head to look at the Grand Elder. Grand Elder, actually, I didn't have any hope. I've been like this ever since I gave Lin Yi the senseless grass. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given it to him. As for whether or not I want to give up, I just want to remember this memory. I don't want to forget it. The Grand Elder frowned after hearing Tang Yun's words. She couldn't understand. If there's no hope, why do you want to remember this memory? Isn't it better to forget it? You're just adding to the pain. Aren't you just looking for trouble? Tang Yun smiled bitterly and didn't explain. The Grand Elder, who had no experience in love, couldn't understand this kind of unforgettable love between lovers. She also couldn't understand this kind of action, knowing the pain but wanting to remember it. So Tang Yun couldn't explain anything to her. The Grand Elder grew up in the Snow Valley. She didn't know what love was, so it was normal that she didn't understand Tang Yun. Coincidentally, this time, your 3 old friends came here. I'll ask them to go back and get some of Lin Yi's blood. How about it? After you take the senseless grass, you can completely cultivate in peace, the Grand Elder said. I don't want it. Tang Yun shook her head. Her voice wasn't loud, but her tone was incomparably firm. Why? So that when you cultivate, there won't be any pain? The Grand Elder was very puzzled. This is my own business. I hope the Grand Elder won't interfere. Tang Yun's personality was very stubborn. Once she made up her mind, it was hard to change her mind. Even the Grand Elder couldn't do it. Chapter 27:12. The Grand Elder stood up and left. Tang Yun closed her eyes and fell into a deep recollection of the past. In the next 2 days, Kong Xiaobo, Xiaofan, and Lu Xinwen stayed with Mrs. Tang. After Tang Yun left, she didn't appear again. Although the valley was beautiful and fun, they weren't interested. Without Tang Yun, what was the point of staying here? However, they understood that although Mrs. Tang was unrestrained here, it was built on the premise that Tang Yun was obedient and cultivating here. Otherwise, why would the valley allow Mrs. Tang to do that? So, even if Tang Yun couldn't accompany them, Kong Xiaobo didn't think much of it. Today was their 3rd day in the valley, and Kong Xiaobo was ready to leave. Auntie, we're leaving today. Sorry for the trouble we've caused these few days. Kong Xiaobo said. You're leaving now? You're not staying for a few more days? Mrs. Tang paused and was a bit reluctant. What trouble? It's no trouble at all. If you don't come, it's boring for me to be alone. If you come, I can chat with you. Actually, although Mrs. Tang was quite domineering in the valley, she was also very lonely. Other than her husband Tang Juqing and Tang Yun's birth mother Xiaoming, the only person she talked to every day was her adopted daughter Tang Yun. She couldn't see Tang Yun often. There were many other people from the Snow Valley who wanted to talk to her. However, these people only answered her questions one by one. They told her everything they knew, but this was basically a question and answer. It was completely different from chatting. Auntie, I still have things to do at the company, so I can't stay for long. Plus, if I stay here for too long, Boss Linny might be suspicious, so I think I should go back earlier. Kong Xiaobo understood Mrs. Tang, but since Tang Yun wasn't going to appear, they didn't have the mood to play anymore. All right, come again when you have time. Mrs. Tang sighed helplessly. And so, Kong Xiaobo, Xiaofan, and Lu Xinwen began their journey back, ending their trip to the valley. The Grand Elder didn't stop them from taking many treasures with them. To her, these things were all valuable, only Tang Yun was priceless. Tang Yun was her and Sydney's hope to step into the heavenly path. Otherwise, they would only be able to stay at the peak late phase of heaven class for the rest of their lives. Now that they had this opportunity, they might regret it for the rest of their lives. Kong Xiaobo brought Xiaofan and Lu Xinwen back to Songshan. But that night, Kong Xiaobo drove again and brought a car to Lin Yi's villa in Shueshang district. When Lin Yi saw Kong Xiaobo at the door, he was surprised. Xiaobo, why are you here? Boss, I want to buy the herbs. This time, not only did I buy the herbs that Shu needed, I also brought back some treasures that are useful to you. Kong Xiaobo pointed at the trunk of his car. Oh. It seems like you came back with a lot of things. Lin Yi didn't think that Kong Xiaobo's trip would be so smooth. When he said that he was going to buy the herbs for Yushu, Lin Yi didn't have much hope. After all, the herbs that Yushu needed were extremely precious. It wasn't something that could be easily bought. But now, It seemed like Kong Xiaobo really got it easily. Did you buy the herbs I needed? Yushu said as she winked at Kong Xiaobo, signaling him to stop talking. After all, buying the herbs for her was just an excuse. Whether or not Kong Xiaobo could buy them was another matter. Yushu wanted Kong Xiaobo to stop talking nonsense. She took out a random herb from the trunk and said that it was what she needed. I got it, I got it. Kong Xiaobo nodded naturally and helped Yushu open the trunk. Huh. Yushu opened the box in Kong Xiaobo's trunk and saw the ice spirit fruit inside. She was about to scream. Wasn't this the ice spirit fruit? How did he get it? However, she suddenly had an idea and said, I really bought it. This is the ice spirit fruit. I didn't think that you, Kong Xiaobo, are so reliable. Haha, of course. Kong Xiaobo relaxed. It seemed that the lie was over. Ice spirit fruit? What is that? Lin Yi paused. He had heard of the fire spirit fruit before, but this was the first time he heard of the ice spirit fruit. He didn't know what happened in the snowy valley. He didn't have any memories of this period, so he didn't know what the ice spirit fruit was. Is it the opposite of the fire spirit fruit? Yeah. The fire spirit's fruit is used to cure the yin's qi deviation, and the ice's spirit's fruit is used to cure the fire's qi deviation, the fire poison. Yushu nodded. This is what Shu wants. Oh, I see. Lin Yi nodded. He naturally didn't know how precious the ice spirit fruit was, so he didn't think too much about it. The fire spirit fruit was precious, but it didn't mean that the ice spirit fruit was precious as well. Lin Yi didn't think too much about it, but Meng Yao was really shocked. When they went to the snowy valley, they had to go through a lot of trouble to get an ice spirit fruit. The snowy valley gave them a sky-high price, and they didn't have the money to pay for it. In the end, Tang Yun had to stay in the snowy valley to train in exchange for the ice spirit fruit. But now, Kong Xiaobo just casually brought one back? Tang Yun's position in the snowy valley was already this high? Meng Yao was happy for Tang Yun, but at the same time, she felt sad. Although Tang Yun's position had risen, she probably wouldn't be as happy as before. Lin Yi picked up the ice spirit fruit, and as expected, a wave of cold air came from the fruit, making people feel comfortable. It was the best medicine to cure the fire poison. Shu, keep this well. Since this is the medicine for you, don't lose it. Lin Yi passed the fruit to Yushu. Yes, Shu will keep it well. Yushu nodded. Kong Xiaobo took out the treasures he brought from the snowy valley. He took out the top one and said, Boss, this is also a good thing. It's called the Sky Barrier Breaking Fruit. After eating it, it can help practitioners below Sky Class to break through the barrier smoothly. There's no pain or side effects, but it can't be used to break through to Sky Class. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.